Chapter 1405. Dead Silence. The moment Chu Luiyue finished speaking, the surrounding air seemed to have frozen. Elder Bo Yan's eyelids twitched violently, and he asked almost instinctively. Used? What does that mean? Chu Luiyue suddenly smiled, and her eyes curved into crescents. I used it to reconstruct the three-eyed eagle's physical body. She was still hesitant about whether she should confess this matter. After thinking for a while, she finally chose to tell the truth. On one hand, the reaction of the scale had already pointed the finger at her, and the Great Phoenix Dragon clan would definitely investigate this matter to the end. On the other hand, she had formed a contract with Zi Qin, and she would have to summon him whenever she traveled in the Divine Ruins world. The two Great Phoenix Dragon wing bones were in its body, so how could they not find it? This matter could not be concealed at all, and it would be exposed sooner or later. Instead of running away pathetically, it was better to face it directly. So what if she used it? When Mao Yao heard Chu Luiyue's words, his vision turned black, and he almost fainted. This Shangguan Yu actually used their noble corpses to reconstruct the three-eyed eagle's physical body. Disgrace. This was the greatest disgrace. Before coming here, he had imagined countless scenarios. However, he had never thought of this one. Although the three-eyed eagle was also a divine beast, its level was obviously much lower than theirs. How dare Shangguan Yu do this? You, Mao Yao's chest seemed to be surging wildly, and he could not even complete his sentence. He only raised his finger and pointed at Chu Luiyue, his body trembling slightly. The onlookers were also shocked. What kind of trick was this? Using the Great Phoenix Dragon's corpse to reconstruct the three-eyed eagle's physical body. Although the effect was not bad, that was a Great Phoenix Dragon. Elder Bo Yan's face was blank. At this moment, the first thought that flashed through his mind was, no wonder the three-eyed eagle's combat power was so strong. It did not lose to the crimson gold heavenly phoenix at all. This is a serious matter. Don't let your emotions affect your decisions and speak nonsense. Elder Wanjing suddenly let out a deep shout. Chu Luiyue looked in the direction of the voice. Elder Wanjing's face was cold, but his eyes were filled with anxiety and nervousness. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh. She knew that Elder Wanjing didn't want her to bear the brunt of the danger, so he said that on purpose. But she was the one who did it, so she should bear all the responsibility. She raised her chin slightly. This was done by me alone. It has nothing to do with Taizu or the academy. If you want to find out who's responsible, just come at me. Shangguan Jing went forward and grabbed her arm, looking anxious. Did she know how much trouble this would bring her? The great Void Phoenix Dragon race had chased after him for thousands of years just for that corpse. Now that she had taken it for herself, she had touched their reverse scale. Even he might not be able to protect her. Chu Luiyue's lips curved slightly, and then she pried Taizu's hand away bit by bit. Taizu, one person is responsible for one's actions. This has nothing to do with you. But, I knew that this day would come when I dared to do this. After Chu Luiyue finished speaking, she suddenly tapped her toes. Her figure quickly flew into the sky. Finally, she stopped when she was almost at the same level as Mao Yao and the others. Elder Wanjing wanted to go over without thinking, but Elder Huafeng stopped him. Wait. Let's see what that girl plans to do. Elder Wanjing was extremely anxious. What time is it now? If we're late, I'm afraid she would lose her life. Elder Huafeng gritted his teeth. Didn't you see that Rongxiu hasn't moved yet? Perhaps they have other ways. Elder Wanjing turned his head and saw that Rongxiu was still standing on the spot. He looked up slightly and was staring at the two sides that were in a confrontation. His face was expressionless, making it hard to guess. Elder Wanzhang and the others hesitated. They all knew how much Rong Xiu cared about Sheng Wanyu. But until now, he was still biding his time. Did he really have other ways? In fact, Rong Xiu had already ignored all the chaotic sounds around him. He put one hand behind his back and cracked his knuckles. He seemed to be counting the time, but also seemed to be waiting for something. His deep phoenix eyes seemed to be calm, but in reality, they were surging with undercurrents. Boom! Another bolt of heavenly lightning struck down. The top of Thousand Wine Mountain was already in a mess. Previously, Elder Bo Yen and the others had spent a lot of effort to recover from the incident, and it wasn't easy. Now that the Tianlei had fallen, everything was gone. Trees fell and rocks collapsed. The charred marks were a ghastly sight. Only the spring in the middle seemed to be sealed by an invisible barrier. The Tianlei fell around it, but it did not fall into it. Frost had condensed and covered half of it. Something seemed to be stirring in its depths, ready to erupt at any time. "You're quite bold at such a young age." Mao Yao stared at Chu Luyue and laughed out of anger. "Looks like you've already thought about how you're going to die." Chu Luyue also laughed. "Not really. I've died once, so I cherish my life a lot. I'm here to discuss with you how we should resolve this matter." Mao Yao thought he had heard wrongly. "You used the corpse of my great Phoenix Dragon clan, and you still want to live. Dream on." Before he finished speaking, he suddenly raised his hand. Chi! Suddenly, a dazzling light burst out from the scales. Then, it turned into a huge dragon and went straight for Chu Luyue. Sheng Wanjing was shocked. "Oh no! That's Mao Yao's true body." Digression, 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Over the past few years, that old man had been taking special care of Jiang Jiwan. Now that he was willing to do so, it was really hard not to let one's imagination roam. Jiang Jiwan bit her lips. Her eyes were red and tears kept falling. Unfortunately, she couldn't say a single word of rebuttal. Of course, she couldn't reveal the truth to the public. If that was the case, her life would be completely over. This, Elder Yu Jing was speechless. But she is ultimately a member of the Jiang family, and the clan leader has always treated her very well. If we stand by and do nothing when she encounters such a situation, how are we going to explain it to the elders in the future? After thinking about it, he could only bring up the clan leader. 36 Revered Elder Ming chuckled. Of course, let them explain it themselves. In this day and age, did people who did wrong still have reason? Besides, isn't the Jiang family just one of the subordinate clans of the Yuntian Tower? Since when can they act like a tyrant here? Yu Jing, aren't you helping them too much today? As he spoke, 36 Revered Elder Ming narrowed his eyes and sized him up carefully. Elder Yu Jing felt numb all over from his gaze and quickly changed the topic. Aren't I also doing this for the Yuntian Tower? After all, the Jiang family is the leader of the 28 clans. Now that the clan leader is in seclusion and the saint is not around, if something really happens, whoever makes a mistake will bear the consequences. 36 Revered Elder Ming's attitude was very unyielding. After a short silence, both sides were in a stalemate. Jiang Hitian became anxious. 36 Revered Elder Ming's position was more important than Revered Elder Yu Jing's. If he insisted on not letting them enter the Yuntian Tower, then, even if a few more revered elders came, there wouldn't be any hope. 36 Revered Elder Ming turned to leave. He didn't have much time to waste on these people and such matters. Seal the area with a barrier. Without my orders, no outsiders are allowed to enter. Yes. The guard quickly responded. 36 Revered Elder Ming. Please wait. Jiang Jiwan suddenly took a step forward. As she spoke, she took out something from her neck and gritted her teeth. I have the clan leader's token. The air froze for a moment. 36 Revered Elder Ming slowly turned around and looked at Jiang Ji-won in disbelief. What did you say? Jiang Ji-won didn't want to expose this matter at first. After all, it involved too many people. But she really had no other choice. She gripped the item tightly in her hand and said word by word, I want to go to Wanzhong Mountain. Lingshao College. Pengmin Mountain. Inside the tower, it was quiet. Time passed slowly. Even the subtle sound of the wind was hidden. Everything around seemed to have frozen, but it also seemed to be undergoing some subtle changes. At a certain moment, Chu Luiyue opened her eyes again. Chapter 1407. Didn't this door disappear? Why did it suddenly appear here? Chu Luiyue was stunned for a long time before she finally accepted this fact. She adjusted her breathing and maintained the appearance of everything as usual. Gradually, the outline and lines of the door became clearer. Finally, it appeared in front of Chu Luiyue's eyes. If only this door could be opened. Just as this thought flashed through her mind, Chu Luiyue realized that the door had really opened. At this moment, she realized that her consciousness seemed to be controlled by some kind of power and condensed into a small figure. That small figure was exactly the same as her and could move according to her consciousness. Just as she was about to enter, the small figure entered through the door. Light and shadow changed in front of her eyes. Something seemed to be flying past him at high speed. It brought a gust of cold wind. After a long while, the surroundings gradually quieted down. Chu Luiyue opened her eyes. Immediately, she held her breath. She had actually entered the door. It was still the same square space, and all kinds of free and unrestrained lines were drawn. Even, the density of the heaven and earth origin force was exactly the same as before. The invisible surging power began to gather rapidly in Chu Luiyue's body. At the top of the tower. In the quiet and empty room, a blue-robed old man sat cross-legged. His hair was white, and his face was wrinkled with traces of time erosion. His aura was ethereal, and he had the demeanor of an immortal. In the void in front of him, a horsetail whisk floated quietly. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Suddenly, his brows moved slightly. A low and hoarse voice came from his throat. The next moment, he opened his eyes. It was a pair of gray eyes that were extremely pure and clean. They were as pure as a newborn baby, and as vast as the vicissitudes of life that had seen thousands of sails, deep and tolerant. If one were to meet such a pair of eyes, it would be as if all the secrets would be exposed. At this moment, he was looking at a door not far in front of him. That door and his horsetail whisk looked at each other from afar, facing each other. A look of contemplation flashed through Elder Meng's eyes. This door doesn't seem right. But upon closer inspection, it seemed to be quite normal, and he couldn't tell what was wrong. Am I thinking too much? Elder Meng calmed his heart. During this period of time, he had been tormented by this thing to the point of choking. It was a little restless before, and he spent a lot of effort to move it from the first floor to the top floor. He put it in front of him and looked at it personally. I can't let anything happen again. Elder Meng stared at the door for a while to make sure there was nothing wrong with it before he closed his eyes again. But his heart was still drumming more or less. Digression, I'll come back after dinner, it's the last day, don't forget to vote. This month's comment stars, monthly vote stars, and recommendation stars, if you want to verify it. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1408. I've run into a little trouble. Dugu Mabao said faintly. He said it casually, but Rong Xiu understood that it was not a small matter for him to be like this. I've blocked all news and used some means. There shouldn't be any problems in the short term. Dugu Mabao continued. Hearing him say this, Rongxiu swallowed the rest of his words. Where's Yu her? Dugu Mabao paused. She seems to have broken through to the 9th stage. It shouldn't be long before she breaks through to the God realm, right? Rongxiu nodded. She's at Mount Pingmin. Dugu Mabao narrowed his eyes and didn't speak for a while. There seemed to be a glimmer of light in his demonic purple eyes. She went there on her own. Yes. I guessed. Dugu Mabao didn't look surprised, as if he had already expected it. How much did she remember? Speaking of this, he raised his gaze and looked at Rongxiu. Rongxiu's thin scarlet lips curled up slightly. He walked over with a faint smile. I'm really not sure. Some time ago, she was in a coma. When she woke up, she said she wanted to go to Mount Pingmin. Other than that, there didn't seem to be anything unusual. As for what she remembered and how much she remembered, she refused to tell me, so I can't guess. Of course, he knew that Chu Luiyue remembered a lot of things. Otherwise, she wouldn't have directly asked to go to Mount Pingmin and be so sure that he was willing to help. But, she didn't seem to want to lay her cards on the table. He simply didn't ask. Dugu Mabao was silent for a moment. Let her be. During this period of time, there will be a lot of trouble coming to the door. She can also avoid it. I think so too. Rongxiu nodded. With the support of the academy, I think those people won't be able to cause much trouble. But, are you sure the situation on your side is okay? Otherwise, Dugu Mabao frowned. With such a serious expression on her chubby, white, and tender little face, it was always easy for people to fall out of character. Fortunately, other than himself, only Rongxiu was here. No need. Dugu Mabao picked up his teacup. Lingxiao College suffered a lot in this trip to the northern region of the untainted land, and there will be a lot of trouble later. Keep an eye on them. Don't worry about that. Rongxiu smiled. No matter what, Yuntian Tower and I will always be with Lingxiao College. Upon hearing this, Dugu Mabao was relieved. Although he had always been very picky about Rongxiu, relatively speaking, among these people, Rongxiu was considered more reliable. The room fell into a brief silence. I have to make a trip back to the Red Moon Desert. Dugu Mabao said. There seems to be a problem on Diwu's side. Thinking about it, he had already been out for quite some time. It was time to go back and take a look. He could almost imagine how Lan Xiao had scolded him behind his back. Digression. It's the last day mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1409. The Liang family rushed to the Yuntian Tower as fast as they could and bumped into Jiang Hetian, who was about to leave. When enemies met, their eyes blazed with hatred. Because of Liang Shaokong's death, Liang Yiye and Liang Xiaoxiao now viewed everyone in the Tomb of Immortal Water as their enemy. Among them was the head of the Jiang family, Jiang Hetian. Seeing their aggressive approach, Jiang Hetian already understood 70% to 80% of what was going on. Before he came, he had already asked Jiang Jiwan to tell him everything that had happened in the northern region of the wilderness. Jiang Jiwan also knew that only her father could be relied on at this time, so she told him everything. Liang Shaokong's matter was also included. Head of the Liang family. Jiang Hetian cupped his hands politely. However, the other party didn't buy it. He scanned the surroundings and found that Jiang Hetian was the only one here. Jiang Jiwan was nowhere to be seen. His heart sank. Where's Jiang Jiwan? You're asking about my daughter. Oh, she just entered the Yuntian Tower with 36 revered elders Ming and Yujing to accompany the head of the family at Wanzhong Mountain. Jiang Hetian played it down. However, his words revealed an important piece of information. Jiang Ji-won was now under the protection of the Yuntian Tower. Liang Ye and his daughter's expressions changed slightly. They had hurried over because they were afraid of such a situation. They didn't expect, this is really strange. Jiang Ji-won has already been expelled from Lingshao College. Logically speaking, the Yuntian Tower wouldn't accept her at this time, right? Why would they? Let her in. Liang Xiaoxiao didn't have that much patience and directly said coldly. Jiang Hitian was displeased, but he could only endure the other party's status and laugh. Although Ziyuan is my daughter, she grew up in the Yuntian Tower and has a close relationship with the head of the family. The revered elders of the Yuntian Tower have always treated her as their closest junior. What's so strange about this? Liang Xiaoxiao sneered. Was Jiang Ji-won worthy? The patriarch of the Yuntian Tower was still in closed-door training. It was impossible for him to speak up for Jiang Ji-won. Moreover, things were different now. Right now, Yuntian-ke had a real princess consort overseeing it. There was no room for Jiang Ji-won to jump around. I really don't know what kind of tricks that B***tch used, Patriarch Liang. If you want to seize Yuan, it's not impossible. You can just ask the guard to report it. However, Ziyuan came here this time to accompany the patriarch out of seclusion. Whether she could come out or not was another matter. Now that the matter had been settled, Jiang Hitian's courage was greatly relieved. Liang Xiaoxiao was furious and was about to step forward. Xiaoxiao. Liang Ye was rather calm as he called out to her in a deep voice. Only then did Liang Xiaoxiao manage to suppress the anger in her heart. Since she has already entered the Yuntian Tower, we shall not disturb her any further. Liang Ye was very decisive. The Yuntian Tower should know the consequences of doing this. But they still did it. There must be something fishy going on. Dad, Liang Xiaoxiao was unwilling. Liang Ye looked at her meaningfully and turned to leave. Liang Xiaoxiao stomped her feet and quickly followed. Jiang Hitian looked at their backs as they returned in defeat. His hanging heart was finally relieved. No matter what, they had avoided a lot of trouble this time. With the Yuntian Tower, their immortal water mausoleum would not have any problems. Dad, why did you stop me just now? I want to ask those people in the Yuntian Tower if there's something wrong with their brains. How could such a B***tch deserve their protection? On the way back, Liang Xiaoxiao was still angry. In comparison, Liang Ye was much calmer. You even know this, do you think those people in the Yuntian Tower don't know? Liang Xiaoxiao was stunned. You mean, the father and daughter of the Jiang family obviously have other cards up their sleeves to make the Yuntian Tower compromise for them. I just don't know, what is it? Liang Ye murmured, puzzled. Xiaoxiao, you used to have a good relationship with her. Do you know anything? Liang Xiaoxiao sneered. She's a person who only thinks for herself and is very careful. If she really had such a powerful card up her sleeve, do you think she would let me know? Liang Ye frowned. If that's the case, it'll be difficult to find trouble with her. Who knows when the leader of the Yuntian Tower will come out of seclusion? Besides, if he comes out of seclusion, what will happen if he protects Jiang Ji-won even more? Liang Xiaoxiao was silent for a while before she said, strange. In the end, Jiang Ji-won is just a subordinate of the Yuntian Tower. How did she get to such a position? I heard that the leader of the Yuntian Tower doted on her since she was very young and specially brought her to the Yuntian Tower to raise her. If not for that, she would not have been so successful. Liang Ye shook his head. I'm afraid only they know the answer to this mystery. Then father, what should we do next? We can't just let her go like this, right? Liang Xiaoxiao would never be willing to do this. Liang Ye pondered for a long time. Send someone to investigate first and see if we can find any evidence. Also, many people have been investigating Chu Yu recently. What do you know about him? Chu Yu. Isn't he on good terms with Rongxiu? But I don't know anything else. Although Chu Yu's name had been very famous in the academy during this period of time, his background was indeed a mystery. It seems that Rongxiu wants to protect him. However, I heard that Chu Yu broke through from the 8th stage to the 9th stage in just a few days in the northern part of the Great Desolate Land and was even taken away by a group of mysterious people. You should know that quite a number of aristocratic families have suffered losses in that place this time. How could they be satisfied if they couldn't get the heavenly square cauldron? Perhaps, in the end, this trouble would still fall on Chu Yu's head. Liang Yi pondered for a long time. Go back to the academy first and see what's going on with Chu Yu. I'll go ask the other aristocratic families and see what they plan to do. Maybe we can find some clues related to Shao Kong from them. Although Liang Xiaoxiao wanted to deal with Jiang Ji1 immediately, she knew that with the Yuntian Tower's help, this was not something that could be solved in a day or two. For now, she could only plan for the long term. Okay. Lingxiao College. Donghuang Clock Tower. Elder Bo Yan was sitting alone in the room with a thick book in his hand. Ever since the dean left, the school's name list had been kept by him. On it, the names of every elder and student in Lingxiao College for 10,000 years were recorded. Of course, there were also the previous deans. He stared at the totem on the book for a long time before he finally took a deep breath and chose to open it. On the title page, the names of every dean were recorded. His eyes swept across the book one by one and finally stopped at the top. There was no name, only a piece of purple scale armor. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. And it was also after that, it was unknown what Chu Yu did, but he sealed the barrier, making it impossible for others to enter. These were all facts that could not be changed no matter what. For them to push the blame onto Chu Yu, it seemed like it wasn't completely without basis. Otherwise, they would not have joined forces and forced their way to the entrance of Lingxiao College. Elder Bo Yan frowned. He hadn't seen these things with his own eyes, but he had heard Elder Hua Feng mention it before. At that time, he vaguely felt that something was wrong. Now, trouble had indeed come. I'll meet them personally. Fong State City. The streets that used to be bustling with noise and excitement were now empty and silent. Only the area connected to the Spirit Firmament Academy's enchantment was covered in darkness. Everyone in the city heard the news and went back to hide carefully. They were afraid that this storm would affect them. There were only a few dozen people standing here, but the forces behind them were all first-rate families and clans in the Divine Ruins world. With a casual stomp of their feet, they could shake the entire Divine Ruins world. Ordinary people naturally couldn't dodge in time. But in their hearts, they also had doubts. They didn't know what had happened to make these people choose to join forces and challenge Lingxiao College. This was the first time in 100 years. Everyone stood in one place, each of them silent. The atmosphere was oppressive, and the air was condensed. It was almost suffocating. Not far away, the elders in charge of guarding the barrier also had solemn expressions. The confrontation between the two sides was about to break out. When Elder Bo Yan rushed over, this was the scene he saw. Even though his heart was burning with anger, he had no choice but to suppress it at this moment. He took a deep breath and was about to walk out of the barrier. Bo Yan, Elder Wen Shi and the others hesitated and called out to him. They didn't come with good intentions. It would be dangerous to go out rashly. Elder Bo Yan gave them a reassuring look. These people just wanted to use this formation to force them to hand over Chu Yu. They didn't really want to completely fall out with Lingxiao College. Now that he represented the entire school, they didn't dare to do anything to him. After comforting them, Elder Bo Yen stepped out of the barrier. He stood in front of the barrier, cupped his hands at everyone, and said with a smile, "You all came from afar, why didn't you greet us in advance? What if we neglect you?" As he spoke, he had already quietly swept his gaze across the faces of these people. Most of them were familiar faces. Many of them had personal grudges against each other. And now, they were all standing on the same side to force them to hand over Chuyu. How laughable. Elder Bo Yen, we're all old acquaintances. Let's not beat around the bush. A middle-aged man spoke. I believe you already know why we're here today. It's up to you whether you want to let him go or not. Elder Bo Yen laughed, but there was no trace of a smile in his eyes. Since that's the case, I won't say any more nonsense. But if you want my Lingxiao College to hand him over, you must have a reason, right? Reason? Elder Bo Yen, you should know this reason too, right? Do you dare to say that Chuyu really has no problems with the matter of the primordial north? Another younger man raised his voice and spoke with a hint of viciousness in his eyes. So many people died, and only Chuyu benefited a lot. Moreover, it's obvious that he has something to do with the canyon. You'd better let him come out and explain it to us personally. Elder Bo Yen frowned slightly and took another look at the young man. With so many people working together, their strength was strong. Even these people started to set up the height of heaven and depth of earth. Chuyu is a student of my Lingxiao College. If he really did something wrong, we won't let him off. But if someone wants to slander and bully him, we won't agree either. Elder Bo Yan's voice wasn't loud, but his words were sonorous. His words were naturally filled with a tyrannical aura. The scene immediately became much quieter. Then, he stroked his beard and said slowly, "Moreover, you all came at a bad time. He was just locked up in Mount Pengmin. I'm afraid he won't be able to come out in the short term. Digression, I'll go have a meal first and continue at 6 in the afternoon. I've been running outside every day for the past 2 days and slept for 4 to 5 hours a day. I was so muddled that I thought it was my last day. Yesterday, I couldn't hold on any longer and took medicine to force myself to sleep early. When I woke up, I felt much better. Today is also the day I'm going to add more chapters. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. If they really wanted to reason things out like this, they wouldn't have come all the way to Fangzhou City and put on such a show. In other words, the knife was already on his shoulder. If he pretended that he wanted to communicate properly, would it be believable? How laughable. Elder Bo Yen was also very magnanimous. Although he was indignant in his heart, his expression did not change much, and he restrained himself from being polite. As the other party spoke, he listened. It wasn't until the other party had spoken until their mouths were dry and their tongues were dry that he nodded his head unhurriedly. Everyone's words are very reasonable. Many people's eyes lit up. However, Elder Bo Yen changed the topic. This old man also has some things to say to all of you. The primordial northern region is very dangerous. Since ancient times, who knows how many experts have gone there but never returned. When all of you brought people there previously, you should have understood this point, right? Not to mention all of you, even my Lingxiao College was in danger this time. We lost 3 elders and several students. You came to my Lingxiao College to ask for an explanation, then, who should we look for? Everyone was speechless. Moreover, when all of you were willing to take the risk to go to the primordial northern region at the beginning, it should have been because of the heavenly square cauldron. Now, everything has been proven. This is just a piece of fake news deliberately released by someone. The purpose is to lure everyone there, and then to cause harm. You did not investigate who the mastermind behind this is, but instead came to my Lingxiao Academy to question a teenager. Do you think that all of this was planned by him? Some people's expressions had already begun to turn ugly. This old man knows why all of you are only targeting Chuyu. It's because he obtained some opportunities in the primordial northern region, and you think that there's something wrong with him. But luck was something that could never be predicted. Just because he had coincidentally obtained something, he had to be attacked by a group of people. Wasn't this a little too unfair? You might not know, but Chuyu originally did not go to the primordial northern region this time. It was only later that someone used some methods to lure Huafeng and the others there that he followed. Elder Bo Yan laughed, his old and deep gaze swept across the crowd. There's one last point. This old man wants to ask all of you, if you want to find Chuyu for an explanation, can you take out any evidence to prove that the deaths of your people have anything to do with Chuyu? As soon as he finished speaking, the entire place fell silent. In fact, how could they not know that they were just relying on their numbers to make trouble for no reason? In the end, they were just angry. However, they could not find the culprit and could only find a soft persimmon to pinch. Everyone thought that Lingxiao College would hand Chuyu over on account of them coming forward together. However, they did not expect Elder Bo Yan's attitude to be so unyielding. No matter what, he wanted to protect Chuyu. This made some people start to suspect Chuyu's identity. After a moment of stalemate, Elder Bo Yan softened his tone and said amiably, "Actually, this old man can understand everyone's feelings. After all, it's not easy for any aristocratic family to nurture an expert. Furthermore, everyone suffered heavy losses in the primordial northern region. Why don't we join forces to investigate this matter first? There's strength in numbers. Perhaps we can find something. Also, after a period of time, when Chuyu comes out of Mount Pingmin, let him explain it to everyone." Elder Bo Yan retreated in order to advance and gave them a way out. Many people hesitated. They did not want to make things too ugly with Lingxiao College. If they could discuss and resolve it, it would naturally be best. Furthermore, even if Chuyu could hide in Lingxiao College for a while, it was impossible for him to not come out for the rest of his life. As long as they wanted to find him, there would always be a chance. Since Elder Bo Yan had already said so, perhaps they should take a step back. If that's the case, then, I'm afraid that won't work. An opposing voice suddenly sounded. Elder Bo Yan frowned and looked over. The person who spoke was Jean D. Elder Bo Yan, everyone here came from afar just to let Chuyu come out and explain the matter clearly. If we go back now, who knows how long we will have to wait. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 14:12. Elder Bo Yan's voice turned cold. But Chuyu has been locked up in Min Mountain. Isn't it up to you to decide whether to lock him up or not? Jean D rubbed his chin and smiled sinisterly. Could it be that with so many of us here, we can't even invite him? He didn't care what the others thought. Since he was here today, he wouldn't be sent away so easily. Others might be afraid of offending Lingxiao College, but he wasn't. After all, they already had a grudge against each other. Jean D's words made those who were wavering change their minds again. That's right. They had spent a lot of effort to come here. If they just let it go, wouldn't it be a waste of effort? Jean D's words make sense. Elder Bo Yan, for the sake of the big picture, why don't you let Chuyu come over first? That's right. Since everyone is here, they can't do anything to him. What's more, he should know the most. Wouldn't it be more efficient to ask him directly instead of us investigating like headless flies? Everyone's emotions were stirred up again. Elder Bo Yan put his hands behind his back and clenched them into fists. These people, it wouldn't be easy to get rid of them. His gaze turned cold. Just as he was about to speak, a low and pleasant voice came from behind him. Chuyu can't come over for the time being. If you have any questions, just ask me. Everyone looked at the person who came. There was a moment of silence. The man who slowly walked over was tall and slender, handsome and enchanting. From top to bottom, from inside to outside, he seemed to have restrained all the elegance in the world. There wasn't a spot that wasn't perfect. He was really elegant and charming. Elder Bo Yan's voice was full of doubt.
Rongxiu.
So, you know everything that happened to him in the northern region of Untainted Land. Rongxiu's thin scarlet lips curled into a faint smile.
Everything clearly.
It's rare to be so smiled and asked in return, "Are you questioning I?" It's not easy to see so many important people in the divine ruins world at once. Just as he was about to angrily retort, I naturally have to come and take a look. That were as deep as an icy pond. What he said was, "This Highness." In an instant, a chill suddenly surged in his heart, as a student of the school, most of his anger was inexplicably extinguished. That disdainful and indifferent gaze suddenly reminded him, according to the other party's status, he was indeed qualified to speak to him like this. Swept across the crowd. Rongxiu was the holy son of the Yuntian Tower. Most of them had never seen Rongxiu before. He now held great power in his hands. The famous holy son of the Yuntian Tower had only taken a few years to reach his current position with him. Moreover, and he had always been elusive. Absolutely did not have this qualification. In the divine ruins world, there were many first-rate families, old and experienced, and the distance between them was very far. The atmosphere, if there was no big matter, they would basically not frequent each other. They might have dared to threaten Elder Bo Yan, there was no chance for them to meet Rongxiu like this. Now that he looked at it, Elder Bo Yan didn't dare to bet the entire academy. Although he was young, could raise the power of the Yuntian Tower and fight to the death when compared to these people who had rebuked the heavens character for many years without batting an eyelid. Rongxiu, over the years, what you said, there were many rumors about this holy son, and most of them were filled with bloodshed and brutality. He could even wipe out one of the 28 divisions of the Yuntian Tower, the unparalleled palace, let alone others. After a while, someone finally asked awkwardly, "Rongxiu, now, with what identity are you answering these questions on behalf of Chuyu?" Everyone's ears perked up. Even Elder Bo Yan's heart tightened. This question was actually asking about the relationship between the two of them. Rongxiu's answer would determine how they would treat Chuyu in the future, so it was very important. In the silence, Rongxiu's sword-like eyebrows raised slightly, and the corners of his lips curled into a slight smile. "If I must give a title, I am her direct relative. Now, if you have any questions, you can ask." Red Moon Desert. It was currently daytime, and the scorching sun was overhead. Yellow sand billowed, and the air seemed to be distorted by the heat waves. A petite and vigorous figure suddenly appeared on the sand dune. Suddenly, the surrounding yellow sand rapidly gathered, and in the blink of an eye, it formed several sand balls. They flew towards that person from all directions. Swoosh! That figure instantly disappeared from where she was. These sandballs collided with each other and quickly dispersed. In the next moment, on another sand dune dozens of miles away, that figure appeared again. Poof! A fist formed by yellow sand suddenly appeared from the void, and went straight for that person's back. However, that person seemed to have eyes at the back of her head. She bent her waist and quickly pounced forward. She narrowly avoided this attack. At the same time, her feet moved quickly, and she immediately kicked with her long legs. Bang! The fist formed by yellow sand was instantly kicked to pieces. Only then did that figure finally heave a sigh of relief. She straightened her body and smiled brightly, her almond-shaped eyes sparkling. This person was Mu Hongyu, who had been specially sent here by Chu Luo to cultivate. After staying here for a few months, her originally fair face had been tanned to a weak color. The daily high-low training almost left her no time to rest, but fortunately, she gritted her teeth and persevered. "Senior Diwu, this time, I finally passed the test, right?" Digression: after a meal, I will continue at about 9 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 14:13. Only the heavens knew how much she had suffered for this day. However, what comforted her was that her strength had also increased rapidly in this process. Just yesterday, she had broken through to become a rank 9 warrior. It was also because of this that she was able to deal with such a difficult and complicated test so easily today. Before coming here, even she herself did not expect that she would be able to complete such a huge breakthrough in such a short period of time. Not bad. Fifth Elder's smiling voice sounded. Not far away, faint ripples appeared on the clear lake. After breaking through to rank 9, your strength has increased a lot. To you, all of this is no longer a big deal. After receiving the affirmation, Mu Hongyu's smile became even brighter. Thank you, Senior Diwu. Then, she blinked and asked apprehensively, what's the matter? You said before that as long as I pass the test, you will send me to see Lu Yu, haha. I knew you were going to mention this. Don't worry, I will never go back on my promise to you. Fifth Elder answered very straightforwardly. It's just that this matter can't be rushed. We have to wait for an opportunity first. Mu Hongyu was a little confused. Opportunity? What kind of opportunity? At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came from the sky. She looked back. A purple light flew over from the horizon. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of her. Mu Hongyu widened her eyes slightly, feeling that this aura was very familiar. Wait! Isn't this, swoosh? Before she could see clearly, the other party had already disappeared in a flash. Only an afterimage was left as it gradually dissipated. A soft sound came from the lake not far away. Mu Hongyu subconsciously held her breath. This should be that person returning, right? But why doesn't Lu Yu seem to be with him? Mu Hongyu scanned her surroundings with uncertainty. Indeed, she did not see that familiar figure and was a little disappointed. Hongyu, go and rest first. Diwu Zhang's voice sounded. Mu Hongyu was a little confused, but she still obediently agreed. Yes. She glanced in the direction of the lake a few times before her figure flashed and disappeared into the void. Under the lake, there was an extremely hidden space. The 4 walls were made of black iron, and each wall was engraved with strange patterns that emitted rays of light. These lights intertwined and overlapped with each other, forming a huge and complicated rune. A heavy pressure continuously spread out from within. It could almost crush everything. Under the rune, 2 illusory figures were suppressed. It was Diwu Zhangze and Lan Xiao. The runes pierced through their heads and bodies, nailing them to the ground. Apart from the night of the scarlet moon, none of them could leave this place. This was a cage. Purple light flickered. Dugu Mabao's figure gradually appeared. His gaze swept across the 2 of them calmly, and when he saw Lan Xiao, he frowned. This was because Lan Xiao's figure was obviously much more illusory than Diwu Zhang's, and his aura was weak. Furthermore, half of his handsome face had festered away. He was sitting cross-legged with his brows tightly knitted. He didn't look well. Debeo, you're finally back. Diwu Zhangze let out a long sigh. What's wrong with him? Dugu Mabao asked in a low voice. Lan Xiao valued his face the most, and he definitely wouldn't allow his face to become like this. Clearly, something must have happened. Diwu Zhangze sighed helplessly. It's all because he wants to leave this place. After you left, he also wanted to forcefully reconstruct his divine body, but he didn't succeed, and became like this. Lan Zhao's strength wasn't comparable to Dugu Mabao's. Dugu Mabao had failed once, but he still had the ability to try a second time, but Lan Xiao couldn't. Furthermore, Dugu Mabao only succeeded because of Rong Xiao and Chu Liyue's help. How could Lan Xiao succeed when he was fighting alone? Stupid. Impulsive. Dugu Mabao was also angry. Doesn't he know how dangerous it is to do this? He's waited for so many years, what's the difference in time? Diwu Zhangzi smiled bitterly and shook his head. I also advised him, but, you fought with someone before, right? Dugu Maobao paused. I've already blocked the news. As long as you fight, the other party will notice. It's just a matter of time. Diwu Zhangzi interrupted Dugu Maobao, which was rare. If you weren't in big trouble, you definitely wouldn't have fought so easily. Lan Xiao was anxious, so, Dugu Maobao was silent for a moment. I didn't think it through. The situation was too urgent, so I didn't care about that. You've always been cautious, so how could you not care? You must have been in a desperate situation, so you had no choice. They had known each other for many years and knew each other very well. Others might believe these words, but they couldn't fool the other party. There was a moment of silence. Dugu Maobao said, forget it. We'll talk about this later. Let's heal him first. Diwu Zhangzi nodded. During this period, he had put in a lot of effort to stabilize Lan Zhao's injuries. However, without a divine body, there was a limit to what he could do. He could only rely on Dugu Maobao. By the way, how's Diwu Zhangzi asked with concern. They had been gone for a few months, and he didn't know how they were doing over there. Dugu Maobao's eyebrows twitched slightly. She should be breaking through to the God realm soon. Lingxiao College. Chu Luiyue was unaware of everything that was happening in the outside world. Her eyes were tightly shut, and she seemed to have entered a strange state. The aura on her body was also rising at an alarming speed. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 14:14. Elder Meng, who was sitting cross-legged on the top floor, suddenly opened his eyes, his face full of surprise. That kid. How is his cultivation speed so fast? It hasn't been long since he came in, how is his aura so much stronger? Elder Meng faintly felt that something was wrong. He retracted the horsetail whisk floating in front of him, got up and walked outside, wanting to go down and see for himself. Just as he took 2 steps, he paused and turned back to take a look. In the empty room, the door floated quietly. It looked no different from before. As for that unsettling commotion, it didn't appear again. There shouldn't be any more problems, right? He thought silently. Suppressing the uneasiness in his heart, Elder Meng turned around and went downstairs. His figure quickly disappeared. A strange pattern flashed on the door that was floating in the air all by itself. It disappeared in the blink of an eye. The tower on Mount Pingmin had a total of 7 floors. Elder Meng usually stayed on the top floor. He would only come down when there were some special circumstances. However, there were not many such opportunities. Especially, and it was because of a student. Elder Meng went down the stairs, his footsteps were silent, and he did not cause any commotion. When he reached the 2nd floor, he finally stopped for a short while and looked down at the young man sitting cross-legged in the middle of the room. The young man had his eyes closed, his face was calm, and he did not move at all. Compared to before, there did not seem to be any changes. However, there was a faint surge of force around him. It seemed like it was about to boil. This was a fluctuation that would only appear when a cultivator was madly devouring force and his strength was rapidly increasing. Elder Meng frowned slightly. Although the force of heaven and earth in the tower was considered rich, it did not seem to be to this extent. He stared at it for a while, and only then did he see something fishy. A portion of the origin power surging in Chu Yu's body seemed to have erupted from within his body. He was absorbing the force of the outside world while digging out the stored force in his body and completely fusing it with himself. Attacking both internally and externally, this allowed him to rapidly increase his strength. Elder Meng narrowed his eyes. It seemed that this kid was quite capable. Earlier, he felt that Chu Yu was not as simple as he seemed. From the looks of it now, it was indeed so. Suddenly, a beautiful ray of light flew out from Chu Liyue's left palm. A powerful pressure spread out in all directions. Wang. Elder Meng widened his eyes slightly. That is, divine power. He had long known about the fact that Chu had a strand of divine power in his body. But the current situation, Chu wanted to fuse with this divine power. Elder Meng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In the past few months since Chu Yu had entered Lingxiao College, his strength had increased extremely quickly. After returning from the northern region of the Great Desolate Land, he had directly broken through to the 9th stage. But, in the end, the 9th step was only the 9th step. Only deities could fuse divine power. Chu Yu was still far away from this step. Elder Meng couldn't help but shake his head. Looks like this kid's heart is really big. It was true that he wanted to become stronger, but he had to be reasonable, right? He's still a young and impetuous child after all. After watching for a while, Elder Meng felt that his inexplicable worries and uneasiness were unnecessary. He thought for a moment and decided not to disturb him. Young people had to suffer some losses to grow up. He'd better go busy himself with his own matters first. Thinking of this, Elder Meng turned around and returned. Just like when he came, he was still light and silent. That beautiful light circled around Chu Liyue's palm. The brilliant light shone on her face, making her skin as clear as white porcelain. In her body, countless forces surged in her yuan meridian, almost whistling like the wind. Her body seemed to be surrounded by warm spring water. Heat and origin power spread through every part of her body and nourished her silently. Every inch of her bones and flesh was undergoing an astonishing change in silence. At a certain moment, she opened her eyes. When she saw that she was still in that strange square space, Chu Liyue knew that she didn't see this with her eyes. A bright light flickered in front of her. The beautiful light made it look very moving. That was a strand of divine power stored in her body. Chu Liyue was a little surprised. She didn't know why it ran out on its own. But, she suddenly had an idea in her mind. If she could completely integrate this divine power, it would be very beneficial to her cultivation. Somehow, as if she had been imprinted, Chu Liyue raised her hand and grabbed that ball of light. The light was like quicksand, flowing through the gaps between her fingers. It was impossible for a rank 9 warrior to devour divine power. Chu Liyue suddenly came back to her senses. She laughed at herself and was about to retract her hand. But at this moment, there was a sudden movement on the wall in front of her. She seemed to have sensed something and looked up. All of a sudden, those strange lines began to move. They gathered together and formed a strange pattern in the blink of an eye. Chu Liyue looked at it and frowned. She felt that this pattern was a little familiar. The next moment, that ball of divine power suddenly floated toward the pattern. The pattern rotated gently. Every line was exquisite and beautiful, elegant and agile. And in this process, that ball of divine power was silently crushed. It turned into specks of starlight. Whoosh, a gentle breeze blew, and those starlight surged like a tide, flying toward Chu Liyue and merging into every part of her body. Chu Liyue was stunned for a moment, and a deep shock surged in her eyes. This space, actually erased the divine sense of that divine power so easily and belonged to her. Digression, tomorrow at 12:00 today is the last day, please give me a monthly rating, moi. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 14:16. Boom! A loud sound suddenly came from one of the nearby mountain peaks. Luo Yanlin and the others looked over in shock. What's going on? Luo Yanlin gestured for the two of them to calm down as he took a few steps forward to take a closer look. Halfway up the opposite mountain, a cave collapsed with a loud rumble. A few boulders rolled down, stirring up a cloud of dust and almost sealing the cave entrance. That's Lin Qifei's residence. Luo Yanming also came over. After taking a closer look, she frowned. He seems to have been cultivating in seclusion recently. I don't know what happened, but he actually caused such a huge commotion. Lin Qifei was one of the most outstanding students that the academy had recruited in the past 6 months. In addition, he was also a mystic master, so Luo Yanming had been paying attention to him. Lin Qifei. Luo Yanlin raised his eyebrows. I haven't seen him in a while. Lin Qifei didn't follow the academy to the primeval north and had been cultivating peacefully in the academy. Especially after he defeated Jiang Ji1 in public, he stayed in his residence and didn't come out much. He was very low-key. Many people couldn't figure out what Lin Qifei was thinking, including Luo Yanming. Later, he wanted to spar with him several times, but he couldn't find a suitable opportunity. Did something happen to him? Should we go over and take a look? Luo Shishir asked worriedly. Judging from the commotion, it didn't seem like he was fine. Luo Yanlin was about to move when he suddenly paused. No need. As soon as he said that, the pile of boulders was suddenly pushed aside. A thin and tall figure walked out from within. It was Lin Qifei, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. His face and body were covered in dust, and there seemed to be blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked a little haggard. He seemed to be choking on the dust and coughed as he walked. However, Luo Shishir and the others were relieved. Looks like he's fine, Luo Shishir heaved a sigh of relief. Although they weren't familiar with each other, they were all classmates. Naturally, they didn't want to see anything happen to him. Especially since Lin Qifei was more talented than a Xian master. Wouldn't it be a pity if something happened to him? Suddenly, Luo Yanlin's eyes narrowed as he stared at Lin Qifei. Fourth brother, what's wrong? Luo Shishir and the other two sensed that something was wrong and looked at him strangely. This Lin Qifei, Luo Yanlin said hesitantly, as if he was guessing something. His eyes were surging with emotions. If I'm not mistaken, the fluctuation coming from the cave seems to be the movement caused by the construction of a teleportation array. Although it was very subtle, his strength was tyrannical, and he had the experience of building a teleportation array with the elders of the clan, so he could acutely sense it. Could it be that Lin Qifei was trying to build the teleportation portal alone in that cave? This sudden thought made Luo Yanlin's mind a little uncertain. This was because constructing a teleportation array was an extremely complicated and difficult task. Normally speaking, even ordinary Xian King masters only knew a little about it. Lin Qifei was actually trying this now, then what is his true strength? Judging from the situation just now, Lin Qifei should have failed. However, to be able to create such a commotion, it meant that he had at least grasped the knack of it. Luo Yanlin was a little shocked. He had always known that Lin Qifei was very talented and had a calm temperament. In the past few months since he entered the school, other than the examination at the beginning of the month and the confrontation with Jiang Ji1, he seemed to have disappeared and focused on cultivating. Why would such a person not succeed? That was why Luo Yanlin had always thought highly of him. However, it was only today that he realized that he might have underestimated him. Lin Qifei seemed to be aware of their gazes. He stood still and raised his eyes to look at them. After seeing their faces clearly, Lin Qifei's expression was magnanimous. He nodded politely at them and smiled. It's as if everything is normal. I don't feel embarrassed about being discovered. Luo Yanlin nodded and retracted his gaze. Looks like he's fine. Luo Yanming stared at him a few more times. As a Xian master, he instinctively felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't say what it was. Alright, that's all for today. You two go back and cultivate. There's still an examination when you go back home. Got it, fourth brother. Fong State City. The two sides were still in a tug-of-war. In that case, you also don't know who the person who took Chuyu away is. In the end, is it only Chuyu himself who knows? Jean D asked coldly. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. She doesn't know either. Jean D snorted. Who knows if she really doesn't know or if she's just pretending? Rong Xiu's lips curled up slightly, but it was an extremely cold smile. If she knows, she'll definitely tell I. Do you all think that if I knew who that person was, would I still be here, talking and laughing? His voice was deep and cold to begin with. Now that his voice was slightly dragged out, there was a hint of coldness in it, making people feel a chill in their hearts. Silence. Many people looked at each other. Rong Xiu's words weren't unreasonable. Anyone could see how protective he was of that Chuyu. If he knew who bullied Chuyu and who was behind all this, with his domineering personality, he wouldn't have swallowed his anger until now. It seemed that he really didn't know. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 14-17. Elder Bo Yen came out to smooth things over. Everyone, about this matter, we want to find out the truth as soon as possible, just like all of you. After all, whether it's our Lingshao College or Yuntian Tower, we suffered a loss this time. As for Chuyu, he did get some opportunities, but it's not like he didn't get into any trouble. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been taken away by those people, right? He sighed. To tell you the truth, when Rong Xiu rescued Chuyu, he was seriously injured and unconscious. He has been in a deep sleep during this period of time. It wasn't easy for him to wake up recently. Otherwise, we wouldn't have locked him up in Pengmin Mountain, right? These words made many people's minds waver. Could it be, Chuyu was taken away by the mysterious people because he entered that place alone? If that was the case, it seemed to be explainable. In my opinion, we should work together to find out the truth. After a fierce confrontation, someone finally began to compromise. Then, since Elder Bo Yen has said so, let's check it out first. I think that's fine. At most, we can wait for Chuyu to come out and explain it to us. It's useless for us to stay here. Why don't we go back and find a way to find clues? Elder Bo Yen took the initiative to give them a way out, so naturally, some people followed suit. Originally, there were still some people who wanted to continue to argue, but seeing that the situation was not right, they chose to keep quiet. At this moment, Jean D suddenly thought of something and stepped forward. Wait. I have one last question. Everyone was quiet for a moment and looked over. Rong Xiu nodded. Just say it. Jean D laughed, but there was no smile in his eyes. What I want to ask is, the sword Chuyu used, is it the one he took from Jean Lei? As soon as these words came out, many people were surprised. In fact, the whole Divine Ruins world knew about the matter between the Golden Wings sect and Lingshao College. Logically speaking, the people of the Golden Wings sect should be very reluctant to mention this matter in front of everyone. After all, they were completely defeated. But now, why did Jean D suddenly mention this? Elder Bo Yan's heart tightened as he looked at Rong Xiu quietly. Rong Xiu's expression didn't change as he lightly asked, why? So what if I am? So what if I'm not? Anyway, that thing is hers, so it doesn't seem to make any difference, right? Jean D laughed. Why not? The difference was huge. Rong Xiu, that sword should be a genuine venerable artifact, right? As soon as he finished speaking, there was dead silence all around. A venerable artifact. Even in the entire Divine Ruins world, it was a top-notch treasure. It was a rare item that all the aristocratic families and clans fought over. How many years had it been since a venerable artifact had appeared in the divine ruins world? What is Golden Flute saying now? Chu Yu was using a venerable divine artifact. For a moment, the way everyone looked at Rongxiu changed. Although they tried their best to restrain themselves, it was still difficult to conceal the curiosity and passion in their eyes. At first, they didn't feel it, but when Jean Di said this, they felt that something was wrong. When they were in the northern border of the wilderness, many had seen Chu Luiwei use a sword with their own eyes. At the very least, the mysterious realm in the middle of the 9 canyons, the hard door that seemed to be forever unbreakable, was split open by him with a sword. Thinking about it carefully, it was probably a venerable artifact that could do this, right? Rongxiu looked at Jean Di, his phoenix-like eyes deepened. This question was really malicious. In the silent atmosphere that seemed to be frozen, Rongxiu finally spoke. Whether it's true or not, next time let her see it personally, won't you know? The smile on Jean Di's face suddenly froze. Are you threatening me? Rongxiu chuckled. Yes. Since the other party was so crafty and mean, there was no need for him to be merciful. If the sect master of the Golden Wings sect was here, he might be polite. A mere Jean Di, what the hell? Jean Di's face suddenly turned into a pig liver color. But it depends on her wishes. Rongxiu smiled faintly. If she thinks it's troublesome, then I can't help but do it myself. Every word and sentence was light, but it was wrapped in a thunderous momentum, which made people's hearts tremble. Jean Di was so angry that he immediately went forward without care. Boom! A ball of golden flame burned fiercely in front of him. Terrible air waves rolled over, and the scorching heat made him suffer. Jean Di let out a shrill scream, and his body flew backward. Bang! His body fell heavily to the ground, making a muffled sound. The sound of bones breaking could be heard clearly, and even his face and body were full of blood. He was in a sorry state, and his aura was weak, very miserable. Everyone was shocked on the spot. No one expected that Rongxiu would suddenly attack. And the moment he attacked, he was so ruthless. The opponent was the second in command of the Golden Wings sect, Jean Di. Jean Di wanted to speak, but blood kept gushing out between his lips and teeth, choking him until he coughed. A terrifying cold aura instantly enveloped him. It almost made him unable to move. At this moment, Jean Di felt an incomparably sharp killing intent. He had no doubt that as long as he opened his mouth to say another word, Rongxiu would not hesitate to kill him on the spot. He curled up his body, reluctantly raised his head, and glanced at Rongxiu. But he saw that handsome young man, who looked like a demon and immortal, smiled slightly. In front of I, you still want to have evil thoughts about her. Do you think I am dead? Digression, I fell asleep at 4:00 yesterday, and I went crazy. Boo-hoo. At 6:00 in the afternoon, boo-hoo. The star of the monthly votes has not been verified yet, so we don't want it anymore. Boo-hoo. Mobile users, please browse and read, a better reading experience from love. Chapter 14:18. The man's voice was as cold and pleasant as ever, and there was even a casual smile at the corners of his lips. It was as if it was just a casual conversation between friends. However, at this moment, in the eyes of everyone, he was no different from the god of death who had come out of the inferno hell. Every word and sentence revealed an absolute power and dominance. It was not until now that some people suddenly remembered the identity of this man. The holy son of the Yuntian Tower. He could grow from an illegitimate child who was bullied and despised to an overlord who sat firmly on the first seat of the Yuntian Tower. How could he be a pushover? His previous polite attitude made everyone relax their vigilance, and even some of them did not take him seriously. It was not until now that he brazenly attacked, that they realized that he was indeed a master who killed without blinking an eye. Second master. Seeing this, several subordinates of the Golden Wing sect cried out worriedly and hurriedly rushed to Jean D's side. Second master. Are you all right? How could he be all right? Jean D was furious. Come and help me up. Although his tone was fierce, he was injured at this time and his breath was weak, so this angry rebuke did not have much power. However, the people below still did not dare to neglect, and hurriedly and carefully helped him up. Jean D was trembling with pain. Several of his bones were broken, and when he gently breathed, his chest could not stop the pain. It was as if someone was holding a few knives and constantly stabbing inside. As soon as he stood up, Jean D pushed the people next to him away. Go away. You blind thing. Several subordinates staggered and almost fell to the ground, but they did not dare to show the slightest dissatisfaction. They still looked at Jean D nervously and begged for mercy, as if they were afraid of being blamed. Jean D was angry. In front of so many people, he was beaten like this by Rongxiu. He had lost all his face. The point was that Rongxiu only used one move from beginning to end. After all, he was dozens of years older than Rongxiu. Being beaten black and blue by a young junior in public without any power to fight back, no one would feel good about it, let alone Jean D, who had always been arrogant and domineering, looking down on everyone. But he did not dare to get angry at Rongxiu. Inexplicably, he was a little afraid of Rongxiu in his heart. He couldn't tell where this feeling came from, but it lingered in his heart and wouldn't go away. This made him more and more depressed, so he could only vent his resentment on the subordinates around him. Rongxiu. I, Jean D, will remember today's account. In the end, she still had to get back some face. Jean D mustered up her courage and angrily left a sentence. Rongxiu did not care. He had heard this many times before. However, almost no one had a chance to get back at him again. Perhaps it was because of this that he was especially concerned about Chuyu. After all, if Chuyu was really his brother, then he was his only blood relative. No wonder Chuyu had always been secretive about his identity and was unwilling to say more. Thinking of this, Elder Bo Yen felt some heartache for Chuyu. You did very well. After today's matter, they should be able to stop for a while. With that, Elder Bo Yen turned and left. That's right, when Chuyu comes out from Pengmin Mountain, you should comfort him again. Don't let him feel wronged. In the end, being locked up in Pengmin Mountain was a punishment. He did not really do anything wrong, but he was locked up. It was really unfair. Rongxiu stopped in his tracks. A smile flashed past the corner of his eyes. Got it. Going to Pengmin Mountain, she shouldn't feel wronged, right? Rongxiu thought as he followed Elder Bo Yen across the barrier and returned to the academy. He looked in the direction of Pengmin Mountain. It was peaceful and calm. However, under the seemingly calm surface of the lake, there was a crazily surging undercurrent. No one knew when it would suddenly erupt and stir up a shocking storm. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 14:19. Yuntian Tower. Wanzhong Mountain. On the steep and tall mountain peak, the forest was lush and full of vitality. Sunlight shone down, casting mottled light and shadows in the forest. Thick layers of fallen leaves were piled up on the ground. When one stepped on them, creaking sounds could be heard. A gentle breeze blew, and the leaves rustled. It was a rare moment of tranquility. But only when one was in the midst of it, one could feel that every blade of grass and every tree in the surroundings contained a shocking amount of power, causing one to unconsciously feel pressured. 3 figures passed through the forest and headed towards the peak of the mountain. It was 36 respected Elder Ming and the other 2. Along the way, the three of them didn't speak much. It was excessively quiet. 36 respected Elder Ming, who was walking at the front, had an expressionless face. Jiang Ji1 and respected Elder Yu Jing, who were behind him, were comparatively more relaxed. To be able to gain the upper hand in the dispute with 36 respected Elder Ming, they were naturally in a good mood. Needless to say, Jiang Ji1 had struggled out of that hopeless situation. Now that there was a glimmer of hope, her footsteps were much lighter. She clenched the item in her hand tightly and exhaled softly. Luckily, the clan leader had left her such a trump card back then. Now, she had already entered the Yuntian Tower, and she was going there to accompany the clan leader. Without any special circumstances, no one could casually chase her out. 36 respected Elder Ming walked in front. Even if he didn't turn his head, he could imagine what kind of proud and arrogant expression Jiang Ziyuan would have right now. He furrowed his brows quickly. He really couldn't understand what the clan leader was thinking. He actually gave such an important token to an outsider like Jiang Ji1. Could it be that he really treated Jiang Ji1 as his own granddaughter? I wonder if the Holy Sun knows about this matter. Soon, the three of them arrived at the mountain peak in silence. In the middle of the mountain peak, there was a huge white jade relief. If one looked down from above, they would be able to see that it was actually a circular door. The door was engraved with the totem of the Yuntian Tower. 36 respected Elder Ming stood at the side and cupped his hands in greeting. Jiang Ji1 and Elder Yu Jing also did the same. The totem was silent. Clearly, the patriarch still had no intention of coming out of seclusion. 36 respected Elder Ming turned around and looked at Jiang Ji1. Since you have the patriarch's token in your hands, there is nothing wrong with staying here. But from today onward, you must stay here and guard this place. Unless the patriarch leaves his closed-door cultivation, otherwise, you're absolutely not allowed to take a step out of Myriad Bell Mountain. His voice was deep and powerful, like a heavy hammer pounding on the heart. Jiang Ji1 calmed herself down and lowered her eyes. Yes. Ziyuan would definitely abide by the rules and wouldn't dare to disobey. 36 respected Elder Ming's chest felt a little stuffy. However, since things had already come to this point, it was not good for him to get angry. Thus, he did not say anything else. Elder Yu Jing's attitude towards Jiang Ji1 was much better. Ziyuan, I'll have to trouble you in the coming days. Jiang Ji1 pursed her lips and smiled. It's not hard at all. This is what Ziyuan should do. Elder Yu Jing nodded approvingly. He thought that Jiang Ji1 was finished and that the Immortal Water Mausoleum was also doomed. Who would have thought that she actually had such a trump card? The fact that the patriarch was willing to give the token to Jiang Ji1 was enough to show how much he valued her. If he could come out of seclusion quickly, he might be able to stand up for Jiang Ji1. At that time, it would be hard to say what the situation would be like. He had a deep connection with the Immortal Water Mausoleum. Of course, he hoped that they could be well. As long as Jiang Ji1 could hold on, since you have such filial piety, the patriarch's treatment of you is not in vain. Elder Yu Jing gave a few more words of advice before leaving with 36 respected Elder Ming. The two of them leaped and quickly disappeared into the distance. Jiang Ji1 stared at their backs for a long while. Only when she was sure that they had completely left did the humble and respectful smile on her face gradually fade. Pfft, she snorted softly and carefully put away the token. Then, she turned around and glanced at the huge totem in the middle of the mountain peak. Patriarch, it's all thanks to you this time. She stood in place for a while to calm her thoughts. Then, she knelt down at a spot beside him. Her movements were careful and her posture was respectful. It looked like she was sincerely waiting for the patriarch to come out of seclusion. No matter who saw it, they wouldn't be able to find any fault with it. After this torment, Jiang Ji1's many wounds split open. Her clothes were stained with blood. However, she deliberately ignored it and just let it be. Although Wanzhou Mountain had a revered status and was heavily guarded, very few people could come here normally. However, there were still many people coming and going here. Moreover, they were basically people with status in the Yuntian Tower. Since she was already here, she naturally had to fight for a good reputation. For the time being, she couldn't stay in the outside world. She had to grab onto this one and only straw. More importantly, Wanzhou Mountain's geographical location was extremely good. Staying here, she could see a lot of scenery. She could even see Duming Peak in the distance. The sacrificial god hall was on Duming Peak. It was also the holy son Rongxiu's palace. Of course, it was also the residence of the current princess consort. After kneeling properly, Jiang Ziyuan raised her head and gazed into the distance. A somewhat familiar figure suddenly flew out from the top of Duming Peak. Jiang Jiwan narrowed her eyes. That person seemed to be Yan Qing. That's right. During the time when Rongxiu returned to Lingshao College, there didn't seem to be anyone following him around. Seeing that Yan Qing seemed to be in a hurry, what was she going to do? Jiang Jiwan looked over there and slowly clenched her fists. Sheng Wanyu, was she there too? Digression. I need to verify the people around me as soon as possible tomorrow at 12:00. I still couldn't sleep at noon today. Woo, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1420. It was said that after Sheng Wanyu became the princess consort, she had been standing in the sacrificial god temple on Duming Peak. After Rongxiu went to Lingshao College, Sheng Wanyu focused on her cultivation and rarely came out. However, who knew if that person was still inside? In fact, Jiang Jiwan's suspicions had never been completely dispelled. She really wanted to go and find out, but unfortunately, she could only stay in Wanzhou Mountain and not leave. Moreover, there was a barrier outside Duming Peak, so she couldn't see what was going on inside. Jiang Jiwan looked around for a while and relaxed her straight body in disappointment. She was a little annoyed. Everyone was watching, so she couldn't investigate by herself. If she wanted to know the truth, it seemed like she had to find someone else to investigate. The sacrificial god temple was Rongxiu's bedroom and had always been heavily guarded. Even if there were some revered elders, they had to ask for permission from Rongxiu before they could go in. Let alone other people. Especially after she rashly barged in last time, Rongxiu was furious and severely punished the guard who let her in without permission. It was obvious that it would be as difficult as ascending to the sky if she wanted to go in now. Jiang Jiwan thought to herself. She had to find a suitable person. Jiang Jiwan's arrival caused quite a stir in Yuntian Tower. The news of her being expelled from Lingshao College had spread like wildfire in the world of God and her reputation had hit rock bottom. Moreover, she seemed to have offended the Liang family and was in trouble. Everyone clearly knew that accepting Jiang Jiwan now would do more harm than good to Yuntian Tower. However, she still came in and really went to Wanzhou Mountain to wait for the clan leader to come out. Not only were the people below confused, but many important people in Yuntian Tower also didn't understand why the 36 revered elders and revered elder Yu Jing let her in. Because it involved the patriarch's keepsake, the two revered elders didn't announce too much to the public. Thus, after much thought, they could only understand that the Yuntian Tower was willing to do this because of the Jiang family's many years of loyalty. However, Yuntian Tower was a first-class family after all, so they didn't take this matter to heart. 2 days later, the topic gradually died down, and almost no one talked about it anymore. Jiang Jiwan stayed quietly in the Myriad Bell Mountain, as if she had hidden herself. Red Moon Desert. In the dark night, a blood-red moon hung in the air. The faint light of the bright moon enveloped the earth, plating everything with a layer of faint crimson. Silence reigned over the vast desert. Behind a sand dune, Mu Hongyu was sitting cross-legged. Every night, the Red Moon Desert would always be very cold. Even though it looked no different from daytime, the temperature difference was extremely great. It was almost bone-chilling. Mu Hongyu's eyes were tightly shut, and a layer of white frost had condensed on her face and body. Luckily, the surrounding heaven and earth force kept flowing into her body, strengthening her aura. The surging force made her body warm up, which was just enough to resist the cold. After staying in the Red Moon Desert for a few months, she could already find this balance perfectly. Time passed slowly, and it was quiet and serene. Below the lake not far away, it was a different scene. In the dark and cramped cage, the crimson moonlight shone in from an unknown source. Those intertwining streams of light were like frost meeting fire, and they quickly melted. Within the time it took to brew a cup of tea, they disappeared without a trace. When the last ray of light that passed through his body melted, Lan Shao finally couldn't take it anymore and fell to the ground. Dugu Mabao and Diwu Zhangzi, who had been waiting for a long time, immediately went forward. Boz! Dugu Mabao flicked his finger, and a purple light flew out, forming a strange totem above Lan Zhao's head. Lan Zhao's body was instantly enveloped by this somewhat demonic and noble purple light. His translucent figure began to solidify. His aura also started to improve. However, at this moment, the lines on the surrounding walls seemed to have sensed something and became restless. Diwu Zhangzi stood at the side, his hands folded in front of him, and his mouth kept chanting something. The syllables were vague, as if they came from the distant and vast ancient times, sometimes low and sometimes high. It carried a power and pressure that made one's heart tremble. Under the influence of this mysterious power, the surrounding movements gradually calmed down. That purple totem also gradually lost its color and became completely transparent. Finally, it turned into thousands of light spots and merged into Lan Zhao's body. After a long time, Lan Shao finally opened his eyes slowly. Seeing Dugu Mabao standing in front of him, he frowned slightly. Big Bao. Why are you back? Dugu Mabao narrowed his eyes. If I don't come back, I'm afraid I won't even be able to see you for the last time, right? Pfft, Lan Shao laughed softly. Although he was still a little weak, he was much better than before. Can't you speak properly? It was clearly out of concern, but he had to make it sound so unpleasant. He caressed his face lazily and touched the shocking scar. He shook his head regretfully and sighed. What a pity. I have to wear this face for a while, just thinking about it made him uncomfortable. He probably wouldn't be able to sleep well for a while. Diwu Zhangzi's eyelids twitched. He held it in and didn't scold him. He was about to lose his life. How could he care about that face? If he didn't know Lan Zhao's personality was like this, he would really go up and give him a good beating. Dugu Mabao said coldly. If you don't want the other half of your face to rot, stay here obediently. Some stupid things can only be done once. If you do it again, Lan Shao waved his hand nonchalantly. What's wrong with that? Aren't I still fine? As he said that, he couldn't help but look at Dugu Mabao, and his lips curled into a sinister smile. However, there's no hope for you to speak properly. In this world, only you can stand you. At the mention of this, his voice became much gentler, with a hint of indulgence. By the way, where is she? At the mention of this, Lan Shao looked around. She didn't come back with you. Dugu Mabao said calmly. She's at Pengmin Mountain. Lan Shao paused, and his expression was strange. That place. Forget it. Let's not talk about her first. Why did you suddenly fight with someone? Although Lan Zhao's tone was as casual as usual, there was more seriousness in his eyes. According to their current situation, Dugu Mabao should know what kind of trouble they would attract if they fought in the Divine Ruins world. This was also why he risked his life to forcefully reconstruct his divine body after learning about this matter. Dugu Mabao was silent for a moment and briefly explained what happened in the Eldritch Wilderness North. After a short silence, Lan Shao touched the corners of his eyes and sighed with a half-smile. So it involves Ling Shao Academy. No wonder you're like this. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 14:21. Dugu Mabao's eyelids drooped slightly. His thick and long eyelashes cast a faint shadow under his eyelids, making it impossible to see his emotions. Diwu Zhangzi couldn't help but sigh. Since it's already happened, there's no point in saying anything more. Let's think about how to deal with the upcoming situation. Debao, you said that you sealed off the news. Dugu Mabao nodded. There shouldn't be any problems in the short term. Let's be careful. Diwu Zhangzi pondered for a moment and said hesitantly, for safety's sake, it's better for you to continue staying in the Red Moon Desert. Don't go back to the Divine Ruins world. Dugu Mabao frowned slightly. About you, didn't you say that Rongxiu is also there? With him looking after her, I can rest assured. It was rare for Diwu Zhangzi to be so insistent. Under normal circumstances, the three of them were centered around Dugu Mabao. Most of the decisions were made by him. Lan Shao would also occasionally chime in. Diwu Zhangzi was the one who smoothed things over. But now, Dugu Mabao had made a move in the Divine Ruins world. Those people would definitely find out and investigate. And Lan Shao was seriously injured and couldn't fight at all. At such a time, he naturally had to stand up. Dugu Mabao didn't say anything. Of course, he also knew that under the current circumstances, this was the best way. But, over at Yu's side, he was still somewhat worried. I originally wanted you to bring Hongyu with you to the Divine Ruins world, but now it seems that we have to think of another way. Diwu Zhangzi stroked his beard. After spending some time together, he also liked Mu Hongyu very much. Although this little girl was young, she had a lively personality and had a tenacious spirit. No matter how much she suffered, she never complained that she was tired. With such a character, her future was limitless. If she were to go to the Spirit Firmament Academy, she would be able to accompany you. Dugu Mabao pondered for a moment. I'll send her there. The night gradually faded, and a touch of gold appeared on the horizon. Mu Hongyu slowly opened her eyes. The frost around her body quickly melted, and the surrounding temperature began to rise. The sunlight gradually brightened. Everything was the same as before. She stood up and stretched herself. In the next moment, her figure instantly disappeared from the spot. Whoosh! On another sand dune in the Red Moon Desert, a black crack appeared in the void. A slender and tall figure flashed out from within. It was Mu Hongyu. There was a smile on her face. Looks like I'm not far away from teleporting 100 miles. Senior Diwu said that as long as she broke through to the God realm, her strength would be greatly improved. I really don't know when that day will arrive, Red Fish. A familiar deep voice entered his ears. Mu Hongyu was stunned and looked up. There was no one in front of her. However, the yellow sand in front of him began to flow slowly. Senior Diwu. Mu Hongyu was a little surprised. Could it be that this was another test? Today, I will send you to the Lingxiao College in the Divine Ruins world. After you get there, you will take the entrance exam directly. You will also be there. Mu Hongyu was surprised and happy. Really? She had been waiting for this day for a long time. A stream of light flew over. Mu Hongyu hurriedly caught it with both hands, and only then did she see that it was a palm-sized jade box. She hesitated for a moment, and then opened the jade box. A roll of paper lay quietly in the middle of it. This is the map to the Lingxiao College. After you get there, just follow the route on it. Mu Hongyu wanted to pick up the paper, but when she got closer, she felt a strong pressure. There is a barrier on it, and it will automatically open when you reach the Divine Ruins world. Diwu Zhangzi explained. Mu Hongyu nodded repeatedly, and looked at it curiously again. Only then did she close the box and carefully put it away. At this time, she realized that a huge Xian formation had gathered above the yellow sand in front of her. A heavy, desolate, and powerful aura gradually spread out from within. Mu Hongyu's heart trembled. Hongyu, go up. Mu Hongyu nodded and walked over step by step. The moment she stepped into this special Xian formation, she immediately felt that she was surrounded by some kind of power. But fortunately, this power seemed to be controlled by someone, and it did not affect her too much. She walked to the center. A ray of light suddenly shone into her eyes. She squinted and looked over. Only then did she see that there was a small purple scale at the center of the Xian formation under her feet. At first glance, it looked very ordinary. Only when she got closer did she realize that the purple was extremely rich and pure. Under the sunlight, it reflected a dazzling brilliance that moved one's heart. This huge profound formation seemed to be controlled by this piece of scale. Oh right, Yu has changed her identity in Lingxiao College. She is now called Chu Yu. You will know when you get there. Diwu Zhangzi reminded her. Mu Hongyu was a little surprised, but she still nodded seriously. Hongyu understands. Buzz. In the next moment, purple light suddenly erupted from the scale. It enveloped Mu Hongyu. Above the Xian formation, there was heavy pressure. Soon, the surrounding void began to collapse. Violent winds raged. Mu Hongyu's figure quickly disappeared. Lingxiao College. After those people retreated, the college seemed to have returned to its usual peace. Everyone seemed to have come to an agreement and did not mention this matter again. They did not even talk about anything related to the primeval north. When Yan Qing arrived at the college, he felt that the atmosphere here seemed to be different from before. He guessed that it was related to the recent events. After all, the matter had blown up so much that almost the entire Divine Ruins world knew about it. He did not ask much. After explaining his purpose to the elder in charge of guarding the barrier, he lowered his eyes and waited at the side. The elders basically knew that Yan Qing was Rongxiu's confidant, so their attitude was very amiable. After a while, someone came to report and invited Yan Qing in. The person in charge of leading the way was a student of the college. He brought him directly to Jiuheng Mountain. According to the rules, outsiders cannot stay in the college for more than a day. Please, the student was a little reserved in front of Yan Qing. Yan Qing immediately said, I know all this. Don't worry, I will leave immediately after this matter is settled. The student heaved a sigh of relief. Then I won't disturb you. Please, it was very difficult for people who were not from Lingxiao College to enter the college. However, with Rongxiu around, Yan Qing's side was more successful. After the student left, Yan Qing looked at Jiuheng Mountain in front of him. He was about to speak when the barrier in front of him suddenly opened slowly. Yan Qing flew in without hesitation. After entering, Yan Qing saw Rongxiu playing chess in the room. He immediately knelt down and bowed. Greetings, Your Highness. Digression, there is a pinned comment event carefully organized by Doriko. Everyone, please participate. Yesterday, I was woken up at 3:00 in the morning and couldn't sleep. Today, I went crazy again. 6:00 in the evening. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. If someone investigated, it wouldn't be difficult to find out that she was from the Tianling dynasty. There was no need to think about what Tan Tai Chin was thinking. And the mausoleum of immortal water was so close to him. Obviously, their motives weren't pure. When these two sides were together, Tan Taichen wants to kill the princess. The people of the mausoleum of immortal water wouldn't know, but they're still close to him. Their intentions, Yan Qing frowned, her expression grave. The Jiang family was crazy. Were they really planning to do something to the princess? The princess was now the ruler, and they were her subjects. Their actions were simply disobeying their superiors. It was treason. However, Rongxiu didn't seem to be angry as a faint smile flashed across his lips. Even if Tan Taichen doesn't exist, there will be others. In the past few years, the Mausoleum of Immortal Water had always been the strongest among the 28 tribes. Coupled with the clan leader's favoritism, the Mausoleum of Immortal Water had forgotten its status and wanted to be on equal footing with the Yuntian Tower. Everything had been planned well. But now, the princess' position that they had been planning for so long had fallen into the hands of others. They had no chance of ascending, so of course they were angry. It wasn't impossible for a cornered dog to do something desperate. Hearing Rongxiu's words, Yan Qing couldn't help but ask, "What does your highness plan to do?" When I came down, Jiang Jiwan had already ascended Wanzhong Mountain. Yan Qing didn't know why 36 respected elder Ming had allowed Jiang Jiwan to enter the Yuntian Tower, but there must be a special reason. And that reason might be the reason why Jiang Jiwan dared to run to the Yuntian Tower to seek refuge at this juncture. Let her stay there for now. Rongxiu picked up a chess piece from the jar, rubbed it in his hand for a moment, and smiled faintly. The clan leader is about to come out of seclusion. If he can see her immediately, he will be very happy. Yan Qing was shocked. She suddenly raised her head, only to see Rongxiu's calm expression. "You mean," but the clan leader didn't clap. The chess piece landed on the chessboard, making a crisp sound. "Send someone to keep an eye on Jiang Jiwan. Also, before I return, no one is allowed to enter the sacrificial temple." As he spoke, Rongxiu waved his wrist. A thin piece of paper flew in front of Yan Qing. He immediately caught it with both hands. That piece of paper was completely blank. There was not a single word on it. However, it was covered with a layer of extremely faint golden light. The powerful pressure was shocking. If anyone dares to act presumptuously, take I's personal order. No matter who it is, stop them. Regardless of life or death. Yan Qing's heart trembled. Yes. Yan Qing soon came out of Zhoheng Mountain. He didn't stay in the academy any longer and flew straight back to the barrier. After asking for instructions from the elder in charge of guarding, he quickly left. The whole process was straightforward and without any hesitation. Everyone only thought that he was here to report to Rongxiu about the Yuntian Tower, and didn't take it too seriously. After a few private conversations, they threw this matter to the back of their minds. Pengmin Mountain. Inside the tower, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged quietly. After fusing with that divine power, her aura had strengthened a lot. As time passed, she was getting closer and closer to the invisible barrier. Vaguely, she felt that as long as she lifted her foot, she would be able to step into the higher threshold. Inside her dantian, the water droplet was as calm as before. The power that was constantly gathering around it was like a tide, wrapping around it. It was as if it was only waiting for the right time to overturn everything. And the seal on the black pyramid was gradually loosening under the impact of the power. Rays of faint light came out from it. That extremely familiar feeling was constantly accumulating. It was as if it would break out at any time. On the top floor, Elder Meng had returned to his seat and sat down. At a certain moment, he suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the door in front of him. For some reason, he faintly felt that this door seemed to have undergone a subtle change. He stood up and walked to the door. He stretched out his hand and gently placed it on the door. It was slightly cold to the touch. Other than that, it was calm without any wind. Maybe I'm overthinking. Elder Meng put away his thoughts, shook his head and walked back, no longer thinking about it. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1423. After sending Jiang Jiwan to the Yuntian Tower, Jiang Hitian went straight back to the Immortal Water Mausoleum. Perhaps because of the Yuntian Tower's support, some elders who had intended to question Jiang Hitian and his daughter chose to give up. Occasionally, there were a few people who wanted to ask why Jiang Jiwan was expelled from Lingshao College, but Jiang Hitian brushed them off perfunctorily. Of course, he could not say that he had betrayed his master and the college. Otherwise, even if Jiang Jiwan could avoid the limelight in the Yuntian Tower, she would be despised when she returned in the future. That was not what Jiang Hitian wanted to see. He had spent a lot of effort to cultivate Jiang Jiwan over the years. How could he fail so badly? Therefore, after returning, he did not slack off and had been thinking of ways to solve the current predicament. In the study, Jiang Hitian was sitting behind the desk, flipping through the memorials and letters that he had not had time to read during this period of time. When he flipped to one of the letters, his expression froze. He involuntarily sat up straight and looked around. After making sure that no one would come in to disturb him, he carefully opened the letter. He pulled out a slightly yellowed and rough piece of paper from it. A faint bitter fragrance wafted from the letter paper. Jiang Hitian took out a green jade bottle from his ring of cosmos. With a flick of his finger, the stopper fell off. A faint layer of white smoke wafted out. Jiang Hitian picked up the letter, placed it in the mouth of the green jade bottle, and smoked it with the white smoke. A few lines of handwriting gradually appeared. He stared at it and read it carefully. Immediately, his thick eyebrows furrowed tightly, and his eyes were filled with surprise and doubt. After a while, the letter suddenly burst into flames. Boom! A cluster of orange flames burned, and in the blink of an eye, the letter was devoured completely. Not even a speck of ash fell. Apart from the faint smell of burning things in the air, there was no trace of the letter. However, Jiang Hitian fell into shock and contemplation. Sheng Wanyu. I didn't know it had such an experience. Some time ago, a man by the name of Tan Taichen had sent a letter to him saying that he knew a lot about the current princess of the Yuntian Tower, Sheng Wanyu. Initially, Jiang Hitian was worried that the other party was up to something. However, the other party had clearly stated in the letter that Sheng Wanyu had killed his daughter and that there was a deep hatred between them. However, now that Sheng Wanyu had ascended to the immortal realm, Jiang Hitian could no longer deal with him alone. Therefore, he had come to the tomb of immortal water, hoping that the two parties could work together. Regarding this, Jiang Hitian maintained a skeptical attitude. Initially, he wanted to ignore it, but he was afraid that he would miss an opportunity to deal with Sheng Wanyu, so he secretly sent someone to investigate. It was only later that he realized that the other party was telling the truth. He finally believed him and replied to Tan Taichen. He hoped that Tan Taichen could tell him everything that had happened in Sheng Wanyu. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Previously, the people that he had sent to investigate Sheng Wanyu had all returned empty-handed. Until now, he still knew nothing about Shanghai Yu. Although he didn't know how Tan Taichen had found him, it didn't matter to Jiang Hitian. He just wanted to know how he could take down Sheng Wanyu. However, Tan Taichen wasn't completely unscrupulous. Every time he sent a letter, he would write a little about Sheng Wanyu, but he wouldn't reveal everything. This made Jiang Hitian anxious. If they hadn't agreed to not contact each other in the real world to avoid unnecessary trouble, Jiang Hitian would have already gone to look for Tan Taichen. Although there weren't many words in the letter, it contained a lot of information. This was because it clearly stated that Sheng Wanyu hadn't really died after being killed. She had returned to Tianling with another identity. Chu Luiyue. However, Chu Liuyue's background was in Empire Yaoqin. That was where Rong Xiu was born. Unfortunately, the letter didn't explain how Shang Wanyu came to possess Chu Liuyue's identity. Was it possession, or? Tan Taichen also said that he had sent people to investigate Chu Liuyue, but they could only find some superficial information. However, he couldn't find out anything else. Jiang Hetian was the same. It was as if there was an invisible hand protecting Shang Wanyu from the dark. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find anything. Could it be that the incident in Shang Wanyu had something to do with the saint? If that wasn't the case, he couldn't figure out why Shang Wanyu returned as Chu Liuyue. If Rong Xiu really knew about all this, wouldn't it mean that he had been deeply in love with Shang Wanyu since a long time ago? But I've never heard of this before. Jiang Hetian slowly leaned back in his chair and fell into deep thought for a long time. How many secrets does Shang Wanyu have? He was hesitant about Tan Taichen's last suggestion. If he really did that, he would be investigated in the future. After some time, his expression changed as if he had made a decision. He picked up the writing brush next to him, spread out a piece of paper, and began to write a letter. Lingshao College, Pingmin Mountain. It looked calm and peaceful outside. However, Chu Liuyue, who was in the tower, was facing a huge impact. The force of heaven and earth quickly gathered and formed an energy vortex above her head. She closed her eyes tightly and her body was like a sponge, continuously absorbing the energy. Chapter 1424. Elder Meng carefully helped Chu Liuyue up. He saw that her eyes were tightly shut, her face was pale, and there was blood at the corner of her mouth. She looked very miserable and weak. Chu Yu. Chu Yu. How are you? Elder Meng asked anxiously and worriedly. At the same time, he pinched Chu Liuyue's wrist and placed two old fingers on her pulse. He was just about to separate a stream of force to check the situation in her body when he suddenly felt a terrifying aura surging out from Chu Liuyue's body. Boom! Elder Meng was shocked and immediately let go of Chu Liuyue's hand. Chu Liuyue's wrist fell limply. Elder Meng was very anxious. This kid had encountered such a mishap when he was about to break through. The force in his body had become chaotic, rampaging and wanton. In just a short period of time, it had caused quite a lot of damage to his body. If he could not control it in time, he was afraid that the injury was a small matter. The most important thing was that if this matter was not handled well, it was very likely to affect Chu Yu's future cultivation. That would be an even more troublesome matter. Chu Yu. The force in Chu Liuyue's body had already gone out of control. As an outsider, Elder Meng did not dare to act rashly. He was afraid that he would accidentally make a fool of himself. In this situation, if he acted forcefully, it might cause a second injury. The best way was to let Chu Yu wake up quickly and adjust his own aura. This way, the damage would be minimized. However, no matter how he shouted, the young man remained unconscious and showed no signs of waking up. As time passed, the force in his body became even more frenzied. Chu Yu's aura also weakened. Just as Elder Meng was filled with worry, a violent energy fluctuation suddenly came from outside. He was shocked and looked up. Although he was inside the tower, his spiritual sense covered the entire Pingmin Mountain. Therefore, he was able to know everything that happened outside clearly at the first moment. After focusing for a moment, his eyes widened slightly. Rong Xiu. Why is he here? Could it be that he already knew that something had happened to Chu Yu? This thought quickly flashed through Elder Meng's mind. He hurriedly raised his hand and was about to open the barrier of Pingmin Mountain. Boom! A loud sound rang out. The enchantment of Pingmin Mountain was directly split open by Rong Xiu. Meng Lao's eyes flashed with horror. When did Rong Xiu become so strong that he could directly open the barrier of Pingmin Mountain? Bang! Before he could figure it out, the door of the tower was forcefully opened from the outside. A tall white figure strode in from outside the door. It was Rongxiu. The warm smile on his face had long since disappeared, leaving behind only a biting chill. It was as if a layer of frost had condensed on it, and it was bone-chilling. Just a single glance was enough to send chills down one's spine. His speed was very fast, arriving in the main hall in the blink of an eye. The messy wind picked up the corners of his clothes, making them flutter in the air. Wherever it passed, it was as if a cold wind was blowing. Rongxiu, Elder Meng opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. The situation is urgent. Rongxiu trespassed into Pengmin Mountain and was forced to do so. Please forgive me, Meng Lao. Rongxiu's voice was low and cold. Although he was talking to Meng Lao, his pair of deep phoenix eyes were staring at Chu Liyue. There seemed to be waves in his eyes that could overturn everything at any time. Elder Meng was speechless for a moment and didn't know what to say. It was rare to see Rongxiu like this. Was he worried about Chu Yu? While his thoughts were surging, Rongxiu had already walked over. He lifted his clothes, knelt down on one knee, and stretched out his hand naturally. Elder Meng was stunned for a moment and subconsciously handed over Chu Yu in his arms. Rongxiu carefully pulled her into his embrace. He used one hand to support her shoulders, and the other hand circled around her waist as he held her hand tightly. Don't. Elder Meng was just about to remind Rongxiu that Chu Yu's body was in a very bad condition and couldn't be forcefully restrained from the outside. However, in the next moment, he was shocked to find that the raging power around Chu Yu's body was quickly restrained after meeting Rongxiu. A few faint golden rays of light shone through the gaps between the two's tightly clenched fingers. Bright, warm, powerful. Rongxiu silently devoured these powers and then found an opportunity to cut into his own power. The raging power in Chu Liyue's body was originally a little restless, but after meeting Rongxiu, it didn't resist fiercely and instead accepted his aura very obediently. Rongxiu helped Chu Liyue sort out the power in her body bit by bit until her breathing became stable. Beside them, Elder Meng was dumbfounded. What's going on? Why did he encounter so many obstacles when he was about to make a move, but when Rongxiu helped, it became so smooth? However, seeing Chu Liyue's complexion gradually improve, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. She was cultivating in seclusion here. If something happened, how was he going to explain it when he went out? After guarding Pengmin Mountain for so many years, such a situation had never happened. The chaotic aura in Chu Liyue's body finally calmed down. Only the blood at the corner of her mouth and on her body showed that she had been hovering on the edge of danger just now. Rongxiu picked her up and looked at Elder Meng. Elder Meng, she needs to rest now. Can you let us go up? Throughout the entire tower, every floor had a different meaning and the threshold to enter was also very different. Most importantly, except for the first floor, every floor above had a corresponding barrier that couldn't be easily opened. Only Elder Meng was in charge of all the barriers. Only he had the authority to open the barriers and let people up. Now that the first floor was filled with chaotic power and was in a mess, it was really not suitable to continue staying here. They had to find another place. Elder Meng was stunned and immediately said, Okay. There's a Millennium Frost Jade bed on the second floor that can help her recover. At this point, there was no time to care about whether or not they could go up. It was more important to save her. Rongxiu nodded. Thank you, Elder Meng. Elder Meng looked at the person in his arms again, shook his head and sighed. What's this? As he said that, he turned around and quickened his pace, going up the stairs. He waved the horsetail whisk in his hand gently. The barrier on the second floor opened. Come up quickly. Elder Meng stood on the top and waved at Rongxiu. Rong Xiao hugged her tighter and went up. The second floor seemed to be much smaller than the first floor, but it could also be that Elder Meng didn't open the other places. However, none of this was important to the current Rong Xiao. He followed old Meng all the way to where the 1,000-year chilled jade bed was. It was a jade bed that was dark green all over. It was crystal clear, and there were some strange runes carved on it. It was mysterious and unfathomable. Rong Xiao then carefully put her down, and his actions were excessively gentle. He took out a pill and fed it to Chu Liyue. Then, he took a jade pillow and placed it under Chu Liyue's head to help her breathe smoothly. Finally, he took out a snow-white handkerchief and carefully wiped the blood at the corner of Chu Liyue's mouth. Elder Meng watched from the side. The more he looked, the more he felt that something was wrong. Hiss, why does it seem like Rong Xiao has taken care of Chu Yu like this many times? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Elder Meng looked at them for a while and couldn't help but mutter in his heart, "It's not like I've never seen biological brothers before, but there aren't many who have such a good relationship with each other." At this time, Rong Xiao had put away the blood-stained handkerchief and replaced it with a new one. He carefully wiped the blood on Chu Liyue's fingers. Just now, when the energy in her body collided, her aura was too fierce, causing many wounds to appear on her body. Fortunately, most of these wounds were small and not serious. As long as he recuperated well for a period of time, he would recover very quickly. The corner of Elder Meng's eyes twitched fiercely, and he quickly looked away. Although he had already mentally prepared himself, he still couldn't accept it when he saw Rong Xiao taking care of Chu Yu so attentively. "Rong Xiao, how is Chu Yu's condition now?" Just now, he was afraid that he would hurt Chu Yu if he forcefully helped, so he didn't even take his pulse properly. Rong Xiao cleaned the blood on Chu Liyue's hands and said, "Don't worry too much. Although he is injured, fortunately, it's not fatal. As long as he recuperates well, he will be able to recover." Elder Meng heaved a sigh of relief. That's good, that's good." Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and asked worriedly, "That's right. Although this 1,000-year chilled jade bed can help him nourish his body, this is not the best place to recuperate. Should we?" Pingmin Mountain had a special status. To most students, it was a place of punishment. Whether it was the density and purity of the origin power or other things, it was actually inferior to several places outside. Rong Xiao paused. "Thank you for your concern, Elder Meng, but this place is good. Besides, he was just injured, and the situation is urgent. It's better to rest nearby. If he goes out now, it's inevitable that he will be seen by others. At that time, it will cause unnecessary trouble." Elder Meng thought about it carefully and felt that it was reasonable, so he nodded. "Then you take good care of him here first. I'll go tidy up the door and the barrier." Rong Xiao barged in directly just now, so the barrier and the door probably had to be fixed. Rong Xiao's thin lips moved. "I'm sorry to trouble you, Elder Meng." "It's no trouble at all. I was also shocked when I saw Chu Yu's condition," Elder Meng said and glanced at Chu Liyue lying on the bed. Seeing that her face had a trace of color and was no longer as pale as before, his heart finally calmed down. After a few more words of advice, Elder Meng turned and left. Soon, only Rong Xiao and Chu Liyue were left here. Rong Xiao lowered his eyes, and a trace of pity flashed through his eyes. He sensed that something was wrong and immediately rushed here, but he didn't expect that he was still a step too late. Judging from her pulse just now, she should be trying to break through to the middle stage of the 9th level. Suddenly, her mind was in a mess, which caused all the power to collide chaotically and fail. Moreover, the crazy and raging power that went out of control also caused a lot of damage to her body. However, she had always been firm in her mind. He didn't know what happened to make her like this, especially at such a critical moment. It was a small matter that she couldn't break through successfully, but if it affected her cultivation, Rongxiu's eyes were filled with dense killing intent. Someone must have used some underhanded means behind the scenes. Father, at this moment, a low moan full of pain and struggle overflowed from Chu Liyue's mouth. She was still frowning, and her eyes were closed. She looked anxious and worried. A white light flashed in Rongxiu's heart. It's because of Chu Ning. 1,000 miles away, a boundless black wasteland. The lead gray sky was gloomy. Withered grass covered the wasteland, and a river meandered on the silent and cold land. Occasionally, a few black crows flew across the sky, letting out desolate cries. A figure was walking on the wasteland. His clothes were ragged, and he looked miserable. As he walked, many bloody wounds could be seen on his body. He lowered his head slightly, and walked forward step by step in silence. His hands and feet were covered with heavy black chains, firmly restricting his freedom. At a certain moment, he suddenly stepped on a sharp object, and an intense pain hit him. He staggered and fell to the ground. Bang! There was a muffled sound. He was wrapped in pain all over his body. He panted, and his cracked lips trembled slightly. Then, he spat out a few words with difficulty. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1426. This person was Chu Ning, who had disappeared for a long time. He struggled to get up, but unfortunately, his strength was almost exhausted. He tried several times before he could barely get up. His hands and knees were stained with a lot of mud. However, with his current sorry state, this was no longer a big deal. He finally straightened up and gasped for breath. Because of this series of movements, his face became even paler. There seemed to be sharp thorns moving back and forth between his chest and abdomen, almost completely crushing his internal organs. Several of his bones were broken, and his blood and qi were exhausted. Now, he was just relying on his tenacious willpower to force himself forward. He glanced down. In the withered grass, there was a piece of broken and sharp bone. Half of it was inserted into the ground, and the other half was hidden in the withered grass. He didn't see it just now, so he stepped on it. He didn't know whose bones were left here. Chu Ning retracted his gaze and continued to walk forward. The chains on his hands and feet seemed to have become heavier, and he couldn't breathe under the pressure. Every step he took was like walking on the tip of a sword. Everything on his body had been lost or damaged. Now, all that was left was this tormented body, living like a walking corpse. He didn't know how he came to this place, nor did he remember how long he had been here. The only thing he could do was to keep moving forward, hoping that one day he could leave this place. Chu Ning swallowed the blood between his lips and teeth and clenched his teeth. He absolutely couldn't die. Was still waiting for him. Lingxiao College. Pengmin Mountain. On the first floor, after Elder Meng repaired the barrier and the gate, he couldn't help but look up, shaking his head and sighing. Fortunately, no one came to Pengmin Mountain, and there were few people around. If not, with the commotion that Rongxiu caused just now, if this matter was spread out, many people's jaws would drop. Elder Meng flicked his horsetail whisk, stroked his beard, and planned to go up and take a look. Suddenly, a subtle fluctuation came from the 6-fan door. He frowned and immediately looked at the 6-fan door floating in the air. On the surface, these doors looked no different from usual. But Elder Meng had been guarding here for several years, and he was very familiar with everything here. He was certain that it wasn't an illusion. He walked to the 6 doors and stared at them for a while. However, that fluctuation did not appear again. Everything was calm as usual. Elder Meng frowned. I don't know what's going on recently, but these doors seem a little strange. At the thought of this, his heart skipped a beat and he hurried upstairs. When he passed by the second floor, he stopped and said to Rongxiu, Rongxiu. Rongxiu, take good care of him. Let me know if you need anything. Rongxiu gently nodded. Thank you, Elder Meng. After Elder Meng finished speaking, he waved his horsetail whisk and continued up. His footsteps seemed to be in a hurry. Rongxiu narrowed his eyes. He stood up and took a few steps forward. Standing beside the stairs, he looked down. There should have been 7 doors there, but now, only 6 remained. His hand gently touched the railing, and his slender white knuckles gently knocked twice. Then, he raised his eyes to take a look. The tower's staircase was right in the middle, spiraling all the way up. Looking up from here, layers of stairs intersected, forming an illusory yet orderly picture. Elder Meng's figure quickly disappeared from the top floor. Rongxiu's expression was calm, but his eyes were like a bottomless pool of water. No one could guess what he was thinking. Where the last door went, was almost self-explanatory. A low murmur came from behind him. Rongxiu looked back. One of his hands slowly gripped the railing, and the veins on the back of his hand were vaguely visible. The failure of the breakthrough this time, at such a critical juncture, was bound to have a big impact on her. Fortunately, she was defeated when she was trying to break through the middle stage rank 9, so she could still handle it. If this happened when she was breaking through to the God realm. Rongxiu's eyes darkened. After a while, he took something out of his universe ring. He rubbed his fingertips lightly, and a layer of faint golden powder dissipated in the air. Outside Fong State City. In a secluded place in the wilderness, the void vibrated. With a flash of purple light, a slender and tall figure walked out of the black space crack. It was a young girl in a red dress. Her skin was a healthy wheat color, but it still could not hide the liveliness in her almond-shaped eyes. She exhaled softly. Phew. I'm finally here. She felt like she had been waiting in the transportation formation for a long time. Fortunately, the process was very smooth. Perhaps it was because that person was too strong, she did not feel the slightest bit of turbulence. Did he directly create a transportation formation? She smacked her lips. She was uncertain of her guess, and she was even more shocked. She did not know how strong that person was. A gentle breeze blew her hair up, sticking it to her face. It was a little itchy. Mu Hongyu tucked her hair behind her ears and looked forward. A majestic and imposing city was standing not too far away. It was like a creeping giant beast, and its aura was shocking. That should be Fong State City, right? Mu Hongyu took a deep breath. She clenched her fists to encourage herself, and walked forward. Fong State City did not have a gate. Everyone could go in and out freely. Mu Hongyu walked in curiously. However, after walking on the streets for a while, Mu Hongyu realized that the situation here seemed to be a little different from what she had expected. There seemed to be fewer people here than she had expected. There were only 2 or 3 people on the streets. It was definitely not lively. Didn't they say that if one wanted to enter Lingxiao College, they had to come to Fong State City first? As the #1 college in the Divine Ruins world, there should be countless cultivators in the world who rushed here to get a chance to cultivate, right? But now... After walking for a while, Mu Hongyu found a person on the side of the road and asked for directions. Before coming, Diwu Zhangze had already told her a lot. So when she knew that she was here, she directly found Lingxiao College's examination site and took the entrance exam. Hearing her ask about Lingxiao College, the other party happily pointed the way. However, the way he looked at Mu Hongyu was a little strange. Mu Hongyu felt a little strange and touched her face. Big brother, did I do something wrong? The other party shook his head. Hee hee, miss, this is your first time here, right? Mu Hongyu nodded. Do you know what happened at Lingxiao College recently? Mu Hongyu shook her head. No wonder, the man raised his chin and lowered his voice. You don't know, but some time ago, many first-rate families and clans came to Fang State City to confront Lingxiao College. Although the two sides didn't fight in the end, there must be something fishy to make them do this in public. Now, many people plan to wait and see what happens first to avoid getting into trouble. In Fang State City, no one has taken the entrance exam of Lingxiao College for more than half a month. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1427. Lingxiao College was powerful, but those aristocratic families were not to be trifled with. If they really joined forces, Lingxiao College might not be a match for them. At this time, normal people would be cautious and cautious. Only this kind of young girl from outside with no background would be in the dark and wholeheartedly want to go. I see, Mu Hongyu nodded thoughtfully. No wonder she felt that the atmosphere here was a little strange after she came. So there was such a thing in front of her. However, this could not affect her decision. Thank you, big brother. She smiled brightly and bowed sincerely to the other party. He kindly reminded her, so she had to thank him. But I have a friend who is also in Lingxiao College, so I still have to go and find her. Sigh, you child. Seeing that he could not persuade her, the big brother wanted to say a few more words, but when he saw the bright smile of the girl in front of him, he suddenly could not say the rest of his words. Suddenly, he chuckled. Hey, little girl, the friend you're in such a hurry to find is a young man, right? Mu Hongyu was about to say no, but then she remembered that Diwu Zhangzi had said before that Lu Yu was now in Lingxiao College with another identity, so she nodded. Yes. The big brother smiled and did not continue to ask. Okay, then hurry up and go. If you're late, you won't be able to take the exam in time and will have to wait until tomorrow. Mu Hongyu thanked him again, turned around, and ran in the direction he pointed. The person in charge of the shift today was Elder Wenxi. He sat in his seat as usual, leaning against the back of the chair, bored to death. During this period of time, no one came to take the entrance exam, so there was basically nothing to do here every day. It was very boring. He glanced at the sky. Oh, I can go back in an hour. No one came to take the exam, so he was not very anxious. In fact, the entire Lingxiao College did not take this matter to heart. Lingxiao College was able to stand in the world of divine ruins for tens of thousands of years and withstand storms without collapsing. It would not affect them for a while. At this moment, a young girl walked over. Hello, senior. Is the entrance exam for Lingxiao College held here? Her voice was crisp and clear, which made people feel relaxed. Elder when she looked up. She was a lively and quick-witted young girl, and her entire body was filled with vitality. Elder Wenxi looked left and right and couldn't help but laugh. Yeah, you want to get into Lingxiao College. Mu Hongyu nodded vigorously. Elder Wenxi's eyes were sharp. He could tell at a glance that Mu Hongyu was definitely not from a first-class family. In fact, it wasn't even third-rate. However, he was magnanimous, polite, and well-mannered. He wasn't any worse than those young masters of aristocratic families. For a young lady to come alone like this, she was quite courageous. Elder Wenxi had a good impression of her and sat up straight. What do you want to test? Mu Hongyu said, warrior. Her physique was special. To be precise, she didn't belong to any of the cultivation categories of warrior, Xian master, celestial physician. However, if one had to talk about it, she was still considered a warrior. After all, she was indeed a stage 9 warrior now. Elder Wenxi nodded. Okay. You look young. As long as you reach stage 9, you can enter the school. Mu Hongyu walked over and placed her hand on the black jade. Before she moved, she suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but raise her head and ask, "Elder, do you know Chuyu?" "Digression, I'm going out today, so I'll be doing this for the time being. I'll come back tonight to try to continue reading." September and October peripheral activities winning list, 1. Star of monthly votes, none star of commentary, yen iosmlisen 2. QQ reading star of recommendation, monody, 210 votes, star of commentary, bad. Little Pure, red sleeve, mobile user, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1428. You know Chuyu. Elder Wenxi's interest was piqued. Chuyu had entered Lingxiao College for several months, and his identity and background had always been a mystery. Now, everyone only knew that he had a close relationship with Rong Xiu, and that they might be brothers, but it had not been personally confirmed, so it was just a guess. It was rare to see someone who knew Chuyu. "I'm good friends with her." Mu Hongyu pursed her lips and smiled, her almond eyes sparkling. "So that's how it is." What a coincidence, when he came to take the entrance exam, it was also this old man who shut him up. Elder Wenxi stroked his beard and said with a smile. Mu Hongyu's eyes lit up. "Really?" No wonder when the other party mentioned Chuyu, his tone was very familiar, so there was a layer of fate. "Come, give it a try. If you can successfully pass the exam, you can enter the academy and meet him." Elder Wenxi originally had a good impression of Mu Hongyu, and now that he heard that she and Chuyu were good friends, his heart naturally became more affectionate. Mu Hongyu nodded and immediately placed her hand on the black jade stone. She held her breath and focused, her expression serious, carefully mobilizing her force and surging it inside. Buzz! A line of words slowly appeared. 17 years old, early stage 9th stage. Elder Wenxi widened his eyes in surprise and stared at the line of words for a long time. It wasn't until the line of words gradually disappeared that he blinked and looked at Mu Hongyu, his face full of undisguised admiration. You're only 17 years old, and you're already a 9th stage warrior." He knew that this little girl should be young, but he didn't expect her to be only 17. "Oh, right, Chuyu should be 17 years old now." This kind of talent, even if placed in the entire Spirit Firmament Academy, would definitely be considered as extremely outstanding. Could it be that the friends around Chuyu were all so powerful? Mu Hongyu retracted her hand and looked at Elder Wenxi with anticipation and curiosity. Then, "Elder, does this mean that I passed?" "Ha! Yes. Of course." Elder Wenxi was stunned for a moment before bursting into laughter. If this was not considered a pass, then many of the students in the Spirit Firmament Academy would be directly chased out. Elder Wenxi smiled and sighed inwardly that his luck was really good. There were Chuyu and the others in front, and now there was Mu Hongyu. These were all rare and good seedlings. Especially with so many things happening in the academy recently, it had been more than half a month since any cultivators came to take the entrance examination. It wasn't easy to find one, and he was so outstanding. TSK. This made Elder Wenxi, who was originally a little depressed because of the recent events, much better. He immediately took out a black jade token. With a thought, a faint light flashed quickly on it. Then, he passed it to Mu Hongyu. "Here, from now on, this will be your pass to enter and exit the academy. It is also a symbol of your status in the academy." So simple and straightforward. Mu Hongyu was also very surprised. She took the black jade token with both hands and looked at it carefully for a while, cherishing it very much. She knew that she could enter Lingxiao College, but she didn't expect it to be so straightforward. Touching the slightly cold black jade token, she still felt that it was a little illusory in her heart. She was directly admitted to the #1 academy in the Divine Ruins world. In fact, because of her good relationship with Chu Luiyue, Mu Hongyu had always subconsciously compared herself with Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue could be said to be abnormal, and after being with such an abnormal person for a long time, even Mu Hongyu herself became abnormal. Needless to say, her physique, which only appeared once in 1,000 years, was not something that ordinary people could compare to. Therefore, although she was already very outstanding, she almost never had such a clear understanding of herself. This led to a considerable degree of misunderstanding of her own standards. "Thank you, Elder." Mu Hongyu touched the black jade token for a while before carefully putting it away. Elder Wensi chuckled and said, "Wait here first. You'll go back with me later." It was not easy for such a student to come, and she was very talented and had potential. Of course, he had to personally bring her into the academy. Mu Hongyu nodded obediently. She took 2 steps to the side and was about to sit down at the seat that Elder Wensi had designated when she suddenly asked curiously, "By the way, Elder, how is Chuyu doing in the academy recently?" Elder Wensi's smile froze. He clenched his fist and coughed. It's okay. You'll know when you enter the academy." Seeing his reaction, Mu Hongyu felt a little strange. It didn't look like he was doing very well. Could it be that Chuyu got into trouble again? Mu Hongyu asked tentatively. According to her understanding of Chu Luiyue, this should be the most likely thing to happen. The corner of Elder Wensi's mouth twitched. Again, looks like that kid used to be like this. Actually, Mu Hongyu's question was not wrong, but it was more troublesome than expected. Elder Wensi sighed with some hesitation. "A lot of things have happened in the academy recently. You should have heard a little about it, right?" Mu Hongyu nodded. Chuyu is more or less related to these things, but his current situation is rather complicated, so I can't explain it clearly in a few words. It's better for you to go to the academy and ask him personally when you see him. Mu Hongyu was confused, but she could vaguely sense that the situation seemed to be quite unusual. Her originally excited mood calmed down a little. She responded and tactfully did not continue to ask. Lingshao College, Mount Pingmin. When Elder Bo Yan arrived, the chaos in Mount Pingmin had already returned to normal, and it looked no different from before. However, his brows were still tightly furrowed. Elder Meng. He cupped his fists and bowed politely in the direction of the tower. Even though Elder Bo Yan was now in charge of the academy, he still had to be extremely respectful when he came here. Elder Meng's seniority was much higher than his. A moment later, a low voice sounded faintly. "Bo Yan, why are you here this time?" Elder Bo Yan asked hesitantly. "Previously, I sensed that there seemed to be some strange movements in Mount Pingmin. I wonder what happened. If it was any other place, it would be fine, but this was Mount Pingmin." With Elder Meng in charge, there was still such a commotion, which really made him shocked. He even directly threw away the unfinished business in his hands and came directly. Elder Meng's voice sounded as calm as ever. "It's just a small matter, I've already dealt with it, don't worry." Elder Bo Yan heaved a sigh of relief. "That's good, there's nothing much here, just do what you need to do," Elder Meng said faintly. Elder Bo Yan nodded and was about to turn and leave when he suddenly thought of something and turned back. His expression flashed with some hesitation, and after a while, he deliberately lowered his voice and asked, "Elder Meng, is everything that the girl left behind?" Digression: I only got home when it was almost 9 o'clock and wrote the first chapter. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock prize quiz. What exactly did Lu Yu leave behind in the door of Mount Pingmin? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1429. On the top floor of the tower, Elder Meng was silent for a moment after hearing the question. He looked at the floating door in front of him and said after a while, "It's fine." Elder Bo Yen heaved a sigh of relief outside the barrier. "With you around, there won't be any problems. I'll be going back now." With that, Elder Bo Yen cupped his fists and bowed respectfully before turning to leave. The surroundings returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. After a long while, Elder Meng sighed. "I wonder when that girl will return. Does she really not want this thing? It's been so long, but she hasn't even sent a letter back. I really don't know what she's busy with." Elder Meng shook his head, but when he thought of the two people downstairs, he couldn't help but shake his head again. "Looks like I'll have to ask Rong Xiu when I have time. Maybe I can get some information from him." On the second floor, Chu Luiyue was lying on the 1,000-year-cold jade bed. Rong Xiu sat beside her and held her hand. Their fingers were intertwined, and a faint golden light flickered. A warm energy flowed into Chu Luiyue's body and carefully nourished her body. Her internal organs, including a part of her yuan meridian, were all injured in the previous accident. Although her body's recovery ability was very strong, Rong Xiu still insisted on using his force to heal her internal injuries every once in a while. Now, Chu Luiyue's situation was much better. Her pale and haggard face had a tinge of red, and her breathing was much more stable than before. Probably because of Rong Xiu's presence, the familiar cold fragrance filled the air and made her feel much more at ease. She didn't fall into a nightmare again and continued to sleep peacefully. When Elder Wenxi brought Mu Hongyu to the academy, it attracted the attention of many people. In the past half a month, no one had come to the academy. Now that one suddenly came, it naturally became the focus of everyone's attention. Because he liked Mu Hongyu very much, Elder Wenxi simply arranged a residence for her personally. "I originally planned to arrange for you to live on the same mountain as Chuyu, but because Chuyu has changed places now, I can only try to let you live closer to him." Elder Wenxi and Mu Hongyu stood halfway up the mountain and pointed in a certain direction. "This is Tiger Head Mountain. The mountain in the southeast is Mount Jiuheng." That was Rong Xiu's residence, and now Chuyu had also moved there. "Your Highness." Mu Hongyu was a little surprised. Elder Wenxi was stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses. Since Mu Hongyu and Chuyu were good friends, it was normal for her to know Rong Xiu. From the way they addressed him, he seemed to be from the Yuntian Tower, or perhaps one of the 28 divisions under it. Yes, ever since Rong Xiu entered the academy, he has been living alone there. Chuyu was the first to be allowed to live with him. It had to be said that Rong Xiu treated him extremely well. Even elders like them couldn't get close to Mount Jiuheng at will, only Chuyu could. Didn't this mean anything? Mu Hongyu laughed. "Isn't it normal for your highness to treat her well?" The two of them had an engagement, and they were only short of a formal wedding. With such a relationship, others naturally couldn't compare. Elder Wenxi heard this and was a little curious. "Oh. Why do you say that?" Of course, Mu Hongyu was halfway through her words when she suddenly remembered that Chu Luiyue was now using the name of Chuyu, and quickly stopped talking. A pair of almond eyes turned, and she smiled slyly. Of course it's because they have a good relationship. Without waiting for Elder Wenxi to ask again, she immediately changed the topic. "By the way, Elder, since they all live in Mount Jiuheng, can I go directly to see them?" Elder Wenxi's face stiffened, and he laughed dryly. This. It's a long story, Master." At this moment, a gentle voice sounded. Elder Wenxi looked up. Sure, why are you here?" Luo Shishi's figure flashed, and she quickly arrived in front of the two of them. She respectfully curtsied to Elder Wenxi, and then said with a smile, "Elder Wenxi, Elder Huafeng came to look for you. He heard that you were arranging for the new students, so he went back." He said that he wants you to go to his place when you have time. He has something important to discuss. Elder Wensi snorted softly. What's the matter? Can't you just come over and say it? The older you get, the more troublesome it is. Although he said that, there was still a smile on his face. It was obvious that he was just teasing. Luo Shishi was already used to the way the two elders interacted, so she didn't care much. She turned her gaze and looked at Mu Hongyu with curiosity in her eyes. This must be the new junior sister, right? She had been here for several months, so she naturally called herself a senior sister. Elder Wensi laughed out loud. That's right. This is Mu Hongyu, a new student that was just recruited today. Hongyu, this is Luo Shishi, my student. Mu Hongyu smiled. Hello, senior sister. Luo Shishi looked at the young lady in front of her. Her small face was wheat-colored, but it didn't hide her beauty at all. Especially those round and sparkling almond-shaped eyes, they were lively and cute. She smiled and nodded. Junior sister Hongyu, you're welcome. Since you're in the academy, we're all family. Especially since you were personally assessed by Master, we're all fated. If there's anything you don't understand in the academy in the future, feel free to ask me. Haha. The fate between the two of you is not limited to this. Elder Wensi smiled and stroked his beard. Hongyu, do you know that when Shishi entered the academy, she participated in the assessment with Chu Yu? Moreover, their relationship is still very good even now. So good that they caused trouble together in Thousand Wine Mountain, but of course, she couldn't say that out loud. Hearing that the other party was also Chu Liuyue's good friend, Mu Hongyu immediately felt closer. Luo Shishi found it strange. Why did Elder Wensi say that? Mu Hongyu and Chu Yu seemed to know each other. As if reading her mind, Elder Wensi smiled and said, I forgot to mention, Shishi, Hongyu was also Chu Yu's good friend in the past. She said that she wanted to see Chu Yu the moment she came to the academy. Luo Shishi was stunned. So it's really, Mu Hongyu blinked. Elder, you haven't told me where Chu Yu is now. My father and mother also asked me to say hello to her. In fact, she hadn't been home for a long time, and she hadn't contacted her family when she was in the Red Moon Desert. However, her father and mother had always been grateful to Chu Liyue. Sometimes, they were even more concerned about her than her. So there was nothing wrong with saying that. Luo Shishi was a little surprised. It seems that junior sister Hongyu and Chu Yu are really close. Why would a normal friend make the parents of a young girl so concerned? And from the looks of it, Mu Hongyu and Chu Yu don't seem to be that close. Luo Shishi suddenly felt an indescribable sense of loss. She pursed her lips and said, Chu Yu is not in Jiuheng Mountain now, but Pengmin Mountain. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1430. The corner of Elder Wensi's eyes twitched. Oh. Why did this child say it so directly? He thought for a long time, but still didn't know how to say it. Pengmin Mountain. What is that place? Mu Hongyu was at a loss. She had just arrived at the academy, so of course, she didn't know what Pengmin Mountain meant. I've already said it. It's better to be honest. Elder Wensi silently persuaded himself in his heart, and then explained this matter has to start from the time when everyone went to the northern border of the Great Desolate Land. Elder Wensi spent about half an hour telling Mu Hongyu the whole story. Actually, this matter had more or less spread outside, so it was fine to say it out loud. He just saw that Mu Hongyu didn't seem to know about it, so he didn't know how to say it. But thinking about it carefully, he had to say it sooner or later anyway, so he might as well say it directly. That's about it. During this period of time, Chu Yu was still locked up in Pengmin Mountain. As for when he would come out, Bo Yen hadn't said yet, so it was hard to be sure. Mu Hongyu's eyes widened slightly, and it took her a while to digest these words. After reacting, she quickly asked, "How is Chu Yu's body now?" Elder Wensi comforted her, "Don't worry about this, he entered Pingmin Mountain after waking up, and seems to have recovered. Logically speaking, nothing should happen to him." Mu Hongyu was still worried. "But didn't you just say that Pingmin Mountain is very dangerous?" This old man thinks you don't have to worry too much. He has already been to Pingmin Mountain twice before, and he seems to be fine. Elder Wensi was quite open-minded about this matter. After seeing that kid's ability to cause trouble, he felt that he didn't have to worry so much. In the situation of the northern border of the Great Desolate Land, he was able to snatch the opportunity and directly break through from the 8th stage to the 9th stage. What was there to worry about? Mu Hongyu relaxed a little. That's true. Lu Yu had always been able to turn danger into safety, and this was only a punishment from the academy, so there shouldn't be any problems. Then I'll cultivate well during this period of time and wait for her to come out. Mu Hongyu quickly adjusted her state of mind and smiled. Luo Shishir was dazzled by his brilliant smile and couldn't help but ask, "Hongyu, are you really not worried at all?" During this period of time, she had actually not been able to sleep well. In her mind, she kept thinking about Chu Yu's miserable appearance when he was covered in blood. Plus, there were a lot of people out there waiting to cause trouble for him. It was truly worrisome. However, Mu Hongyu did not seem to have such concerns. "Of course I'm worried." Mu Hongyu nodded and immediately changed the topic. "But I believe in her." Having gone through life and death together in the past, she could always choose to trust Chu Luyue unconditionally. Luo Shishir was a little absent-minded. "Shishir, bring Hongyu around first. I'll go to Huafeng to take a look." Okay. Luo Shishir came back to her senses and quickly agreed. Elder Wensi was relieved to hand Mu Hongyu over to Luo Shishir and quickly left. Luo Shishir thought for a moment and said, "Let's go to Qingming Square to take a look first. Chu Yu hasn't been in the academy for long and he's already on the Azure Cloud roll. I'll tell you in detail when we get there." Mu Hongyu nodded happily and gratefully, "Thank you, senior sister." Luo Shishir smiled, "You're Chu Yu's friend, so you're naturally my friend too. Let's go." After saying that, she led her away. "Huafeng, why are you looking for me?" Elder Wensi quickly arrived at Elder Huafeng's place and asked as he walked into the room. No one answered. He looked inside and saw Elder Huafeng sitting behind the desk, staring at something on the table in a daze. "What are you looking at?" Elder Wensi walked over and reached out to take it. Elder Huafeng quickly blocked him. "Hey! Don't touch it." Elder Wensi was not angry, but he was even more curious. He leaned forward slightly and looked at the thing. "What kind of treasure is it? Why are you still hiding it?" Elder Huafeng raised his head with a solemn expression. Elder Wensi suddenly felt that something was wrong, and his heart skipped a beat. Bang! The door outside was closed by Elder Huafeng. At the same time, a layer of barrier appeared around him. Elder Wensi was even more uneasy. According to his understanding of Elder Huafeng, something must have happened to him for him to act like this. The teasing smile on his face froze slightly. "What's wrong?" Elder Huafeng paused for a moment, as if he was very conflicted. After a long while, he waved his finger lightly. The thing on the table flew up and floated quietly in the air under his control. It was a square piece of paper. There was only a thin layer, but the texture was extremely good. It even glowed with a faint jade-colored light. It was holy and pure. On it, countless streams of light interweaved, forming an incomparably complicated Xian formation. Elder Wensi stared at it for a while and felt a little dizzy, so he quickly looked away. What kind of Xian formation is this? The pressure is so domineering. Although he was not a Xian master, he had been in the academy for many years and had powerful Xian masters like Elder Hua Feng by his side. He had some understanding of Xian formations. He had seen many high-level Xian formations. However, the Xian formation on this was not the most complicated one he had ever seen, but it carried a powerful aura. He only stared at it a few times, but he felt that the biting cold fighting intent and killing intent seemed to want to break through the back of the paper and charge straight at him. Elder Hua Feng waved his hand, and the piece of paper flew back. He took the paperweight beside him and placed it in the middle. Only then did the shocking fluctuation gradually calm down. You also noticed the power of this Xian formation. Elder Hua Feng frowned. But this isn't even a complete Xian formation. What? Elder Wensi was shocked. An incomplete Xian formation was already so powerful. If it was complete, it was hard to imagine how shocking it would be. Where did you get this Xian formation? According to his understanding of Elder Hua Feng, he shouldn't be able to use such a terrifying Xian formation now, right? Do you still remember that I told you before that after we arrived at the northern border of the primordial desolate land, we encountered several troubles on the way, and one of them was even trapped by a Xian formation? Elder Wensi nodded. I remember. Hiss, could this be that? This isn't that Xian formation. Elder Hua Feng rubbed his temples and smiled helplessly. Even the current me can't use that Xian formation. This is the Xian formation that Chu Yu drew. He only remembers a part of it, so during this period of time, I have been trying to restore that Xian formation. I haven't done it completely yet, only a part of it. But you have seen its power. Elder Wensi knew that they were able to come out at that time because of Chu Yu, but he didn't know in detail. So, Elder Hua Feng took a deep breath. After a long while, he said word by word, this Xian formation is extremely similar to the Xian formation left behind by the first Dean. Digression, let's update together at 6 p.m. in the comments section. February had already silently noted it down. When the truth is revealed, the prize will be given out. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1431. The first Dean, who existed in the distant legends, was an unreachable existence even in the eyes of Elder Hua Feng and the others. Back then, that person had single-handedly founded Lingxiao College and left behind many of his precious treasures, all of which were stored in the Academy's Secretary Pavilion. Over the past 10,000 years, only the previous Dean and a few elders could enter. Elder Hua Feng happened to be one of them. It was precisely because of this that he was fortunate enough to personally see the Xian formation left behind by the first Dean. Unfortunately, the power contained in those Xian formations was too powerful. It was too difficult for Elder Hua Feng, who was not strong enough to completely remember them. However, even if he only remembered a portion of them, it was still extremely beneficial to him. Back then, when he was trapped in that huge barrier in the northern region of the Great Desolate Land, he vaguely felt that it was somewhat familiar, but he didn't dare to be sure. After returning, he carefully recalled the Xian formation that Chu had described to him that day and repaired it bit by bit. Now, he had almost deciphered more than half of this Xian formation. He could finally confirm that this Xian formation was indeed extremely similar to the Xian formation left behind by the Dean. Of course, he didn't dare to be completely sure that this was the same Xian formation. After all, the slightest difference in this kind of thing could lead to a huge difference. However, he was basically certain that this Xian formation was definitely related to the first Dean. Elder Wensi was also shocked when he heard this and couldn't recover for a long time. Do you know what you're talking about? Elder Wensi spoke with difficulty. He felt his throat tighten and dry. His first reaction was that it was impossible, but his rationality told him that nothing was impossible. Although Elder Hua Feng always liked to joke, he was absolutely serious when it came to such matters. He was even certain that Elder Hua Feng must have compared it repeatedly and basically confirmed the situation before finding him. Elder Hua Feng laughed bitterly. I don't know what to say now. Perhaps I should tell Bo Yan about this matter. Elder Wensi was silent for a moment. Don't be so anxious. Recently, there have been a lot of things in the academy that he has to deal with. He must be quite busy. Why don't we discuss it first? You said that Chuyu told you about this Xian formation. Although he is talented as a Xian master, he shouldn't have any understanding of such a profound and complicated Xian formation, right? Elder Hua Feng calmed down for a while before he recounted what had happened that day in detail. The room was silent. After a long time, Elder Wensi asked, in that case, this profound formation was only seen by Chuyu by accident. Elder Hua Feng nodded and said, that's what he said, but we don't know if it's true or not. This was a matter of great importance, so he had no choice but to maintain a skeptical attitude towards everything. In my opinion, this profound formation is most likely related to the first principle. As for whether Chuyu knows about this matter, we will have to ask him again. Elder Wensi's eyes fell on that piece of paper again. This kind of paper was specially used by Xian masters to inscribe high-grade Xian formations. It was extremely precious, but it could clearly depict the Xian formation, so it was loved by Xian masters. It was overflowing with light and vibrant colors, looking extremely gorgeous. However, who would have thought that the profound formation above actually hid such a huge mystery? Actually, I think that Chuyu probably doesn't know. If he knew, why would he tell you about the profound formation so straightforwardly? Elder Wensi said hesitantly. Elder Hua Feng was non-committal. Since things have already come to this, we have to solve it. You're right, Bo Yan has indeed been quite tired recently. Let's wait until Chuyu comes out of Pingmin Mountain and everyone gets together before we talk about this matter. In the past few days, he had been feeling uneasy because of this matter. In the end, he had no choice but to call Elder Wensi over to discuss it together. At this moment, after confirming his train of thought, he could finally calm down a little. Elder Wensi also nodded. This matter involves a lot of things. Before we have conclusive evidence, we must keep a low profile. I know. Chu Luiyue slept for 2 days and 2 nights before she finally woke up slowly. She opened her eyes with difficulty and felt a blur. Someone leaned over. Before she could see the other party's face clearly, a familiar cold fragrance assailed her nose. It was the smell that made her sleep peacefully during this period of time. Her originally fluttering heart suddenly calmed down. Rongxiu. The vision in front of her became clearer. With the help of Rongxiu, she sat up and looked around. It was empty, and there was a jade bed under her. This is the second floor of Pingmin Mountain. Rongxiu explained. Previously, when you tried to break through to the middle of the 9th level, you encountered an accident and fainted. You have been recuperating here for the past 2 days. In a few words, Rongxiu explained the matter to her clearly. Chu Luiyue rubbed her temples and felt sore all over. Suddenly, her movements froze and she wanted to get off the bed. Father. But because she had been lying down for 2 whole days, when she suddenly got up, her vision turned black, her legs went soft, and she almost fell to the ground. Rongxiu picked her up by the waist and frowned. Your body hasn't fully recovered yet, so you can't run around for the time being. Chapter 1432. At this moment, the air seemed to have frozen. The surroundings were silent, and even the breathing had become earth-shattering. The space seemed to have begun to shrink silently, squeezing towards the center, suffocating everyone. Elder Meng was dumbfounded. Even though he had been in the divine ruins world for many years and had seen countless storms, he was still shocked when he saw this scene. Rong Xiao and Chu Yu were hugging each other. More importantly, it was not an ordinary hug. This natural intimacy, no matter how he looked at it, didn't seem right. Even if they were biological brothers, it shouldn't be like this. Although Elder Meng didn't say anything, his heart was already in turmoil. In comparison, Rong Xiao was calmer. After hearing Elder Meng's voice, a hint of surprise flashed across his eyes, but it quickly disappeared and returned to normal. Elder Meng was stronger than him, and his attention was all on Chu Luiyue just now, so he didn't notice Elder Meng's arrival. But, so what? Rong Xiao gently patted Chu Luiyue's shoulder again. Be good, go back and have a good rest. Chu Luiyue originally wanted to ask a few more questions about her father, but in this situation, no matter what, she couldn't. She nodded, withdrew from Rong Xiao's arms, and turned to look at Elder Meng. Thank you for taking me in, Elder Meng. Although Rong Xiao didn't go into detail, she knew that it must be thanks to Elder Meng that she and Rong Xiao could stay here. Not to mention other things, she really felt much more comfortable here than outside, and it was more convenient for her body to recuperate. She had to thank him no matter what. But how could Elder Meng listen to her now? He nodded slowly and stiffly. Oh, no, it's nothing. Your body is injured, rest first. Even when he spoke, he seemed to have no soul. Chu Luiyue obediently returned to the jade bed to lie down. Rong Xiao put one hand behind his back and said indifferently. She just woke up. I was about to go and tell you. Elder Meng's mouth twitched. Tell him about it. He did not see Rong Xiao's intention at all. It's good that you're awake. Elder Meng took a deep breath and swallowed his words with great difficulty. This old man also has something to discuss with you. Follow me. Rong Xiao gently nodded. Yes. Meng Lao turned around and went up 2 flights of stairs. He couldn't help but turn his gaze to Chu Luiyue, and their eyes met. Chu Luiyue blinked. Elder Meng, is there anything else? No, no. For a moment, Elder Meng had an inexplicable feeling. He quickly withdrew his gaze and quickly went upstairs. His figure quickly disappeared up the stairs. Rong Xiao and Chu Luiyue looked at each other and smiled. I'll be right back. Chu Luiyue nodded. After Rong Xiao left, Chu Luiyue was the only one left on the 2nd floor. Originally, she wanted to rest for a while more, but her heart was worried about her father, and her heart was unable to calm down. After thinking for a while, she took out the doctor's book that Elder Wanjing had left behind and started reading. After returning from the primeval north, she had broken through to the 9th stage. Moreover, the black pyramid in her body had a long crack, and it was just a hair's breadth away from breaking completely. She recalled many things, including many high-level Xian formations and prescriptions. Now that she could not use her force, she could only look at the medical books. After those memories came back, it was as if she had learned them without a teacher. She naturally grasped those things. Especially the prescriptions. Although they were extremely complicated, she could recite them backwards. Chu Luiyue vaguely felt that she seemed to have reached the threshold of breaking through to the doctor's realm. However, after her previous failure, she became more cautious. Rong Xiao followed Elder Meng up to the top floor. Ordinary people were not qualified to enter this place, and Rong Xiao was an exception. On one hand, Elder Meng, who had been violently stimulated, had lost his mind. Other than here, he could not think of any other place to have a good chat with Rong Xiao. On the other hand, Rong Xiao had been here before. After reaching the top floor, Elder Meng raised his hand to seal the barrier, and then sat down in his usual seat. After Rong Xiao followed him, he saw the door floating in the middle. He narrowed his eyes, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. He quietly retracted his gaze and stood 5 steps away from Elder Mang. Elder Mang, you said you have something to discuss. What is it? Elder Mang had one hand on his head. When he heard this, he could not help but look up and look at him with a strange expression. You really don't know what this old man wants to ask. Rong Xiao said calmly, please enlighten me, Elder Mang. Humph. However, Elder Mang didn't fall for his trick and snorted fiercely. First, tell me what happened between you and Chu Yu. If he could not figure it out, he would not be able to sit still. Hearing this, Rong Xiao smiled slightly. Didn't you see it just now? She just woke up and said she wanted to go out. She got up in a hurry and almost fell, so I went over to help her. Elder Mang was skeptical. He did not see the first part. He only saw the last part. What's more, was that supposed to be helping him? The two of them were clearly hugging each other. He had known Rong Xiao for several years. According to his understanding of Rong Xiao, he would never do such a thing. Unless, in Rong Xiao's heart, that person's status was extraordinary. But looking at Rong Xiao, it was obvious that he would not say anything more. That was true. Chu Yu, he was handsome and had outstanding talent. When he smiled, he was indeed very likable. But he was a real young man. Didn't Rong Xiao already have a princess? What was he thinking? The two of them fell into a silent confrontation. After a while, Elder Mang's eyes inadvertently swept across the door. His expression suddenly relaxed and tiredness appeared in his eyes. With a sweep of his horsetail whisk, he rubbed his eyebrows. Rong Xiao, now that you are married, you should know your limits. Rong Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. These words, I heard from Bo Yen that your princess was chosen by you and you seem to be very satisfied with her. You should like her, right? Rong Xiao's expression became more subtle. He nodded. Of course. Elder Mang hesitated for a while before he said with difficulty, I know that the girl left and did not return and hurt your heart. After that, you went to look for her personally, but you went through several life and death situations and came back with a body full of injuries. But that is all in the past. Now that you have a princess, you should treat her well and not. He sighed. Some words should not be said by him. But if he did not say it, no one would care about Rong Xiao's matter. So, even if Rong Xiao did not like to hear it, he still had to say it. Thinking of this, Elder Mang's expression became more serious. He said, that brat Chu Yu is indeed somewhat similar to that girl. However, if you treat him as a substitute for that girl, it's unfair to both of them. Rong Xiao's eyelids twitched violently. Digression, I won't keep you waiting today. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience from Love Network. Although she had been here for a few days, she was still not used to such intense punishment. Anyone who maintained the same kneeling posture from morning to night for 12 hours would not be able to endure it. But she had to endure it even if she could not. Who asked this to be her only way out now? Jiang Ji-won looked up. The mountaintop was peaceful. She did not know when the clan leader would come out of seclusion, she could not help but think about it resentfully. But after thinking about it, she felt a little hopeless. The clan leader had already been in seclusion for a few years, and there were no signs of him coming out. Now, she did not know how long she had to wait. Crack. A crisp shattering sound was suddenly heard. Jiang Ji-won's heart skipped a beat. She hurriedly looked over. An inch-long crack had actually appeared in the center of the gigantic Xian formation at the center of the mountain peak. A weak and pure light shone from within. This was, Jiang Ji-won's eyes suddenly lit up, and a bold guess appeared in her mind. Crack. At the side, another crack appeared. As if some mechanism had been activated, the entire Xian formation started to move. Those cracks followed the lines of the Xian formation and appeared one by one. Not long after, a brilliant light shone from below and enveloped the entire mountaintop. A vast and majestic aura spread out from within. Sensing the pressure, Jiang Jiwan was not frightened at all. Instead, she was ecstatic. The clan leader was coming out of seclusion. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1434. Boom! A loud sound suddenly came from the sky. It was deafening. The sky, which had been clear just now, quickly darkened. Dark clouds gathered and the wind howled. Jiang Jiwan looked up and was even more certain of her guess. It must be. The clan leader must be coming out of seclusion. And looking at the situation, he was obviously going to break through. This commotion quickly attracted the attention of other people in the Yuntian Tower. Swoosh! 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 In just a few moments, several figures had already gathered around. Among them were the black-armored guards in charge of guarding the Myriad Bell Mountain and some respected elders. Even 36 respected Elder Ming and the others had already heard the news and quickly gathered over. Everyone looked at the center of the commotion, the Myriad Bell Mountain. In the dark sky, only the Myriad Bell Mountain was bright and dazzling. This is the clan leader coming out of seclusion. Someone in the crowd could not hide his shock and muttered. The voice was very soft and low. Which one of those who appeared here was not a top expert? This sentence clearly fell into everyone's ears. In fact, this was also what they were thinking. The Myriad Bell Mountain was the place that the clan leader had specially chosen for his seclusion. It had been very quiet for the past few years and did not cause any commotion. Now, the Xian formation at the top of the mountain had been activated. Everything was open and the energy of heaven and earth was violent. The answer, there was only one. Rumble. Numerous silver lightning bolts swam crazily in the black clouds. The aura was shocking. Jiang Ziyuan's hair and clothes were fluttering in the wind, looking extremely messy. That terrifying aura descended from the sky and instantly enveloped the entire Myriad Bell Mountain. Intense pain rolled through her body. Her face turned pale and she spat out a mouthful of blood. She almost rolled down from the top of the mountain. She hurriedly grabbed a rock beside her and firmly nailed herself to the ground. She could not leave. She could not retreat. The more it was like this, the more she had to persevere until the end. When the clan leader came out, he had to see her first. With this belief, Jiang Jiwan's originally weak body exploded with great potential. Her face was hurting from the wind, and her body didn't seem to belong to her anymore. She was in so much pain that she felt numb. Only his hands were still tightly hugging the rock, refusing to let go. In the next instant, the huge Xian formation suddenly split open from the middle. Clang! The entire Myriad Bell Mountain trembled violently. A figure suddenly rushed out from below. Almost at the same time, countless Tianlei slashed down from the sky. Boom! Boom! Myriad Bell Mountain was like a sea of thunder. A terrifying restless energy spread out in all directions. Bang! The barrier outside 10,000 Bell Mountain shattered with a loud bang.